Welcome back to the Wanks FPL podcast. We are back for the 26-27 season. Feels good. Feels good to see the ranks all cleared right off the board, especially for yours truly. But yeah, we're back this week to do a team overview. We've each drafted a third of the Premier League teams, and we're going to go through each of them and just talk high level about where the teams are at, offseason moves, changes, coaching adjustments, and then of course like what the best FPL picks are from each of those teams. Wanted to give you guys that overview ahead of the season. But gents, how are we doing? Welcome back.
Dude, happy to be back. Not so happy the rank is gone. Hope it gets back there soon because I was really enjoying where my rank was to end last season. And to be honest, I'm not really thrilled with my team in the offseason. So my point that is. So need FPL to be back and need to be good at it. Otherwise, vibes might be going down.
Yeah, I'm feeling similarly. Last season was so hard on so many fronts, like emotionally, that by the end of it, I was a little raw. Like, I'm a Spurs fan for context, so figuring out that we weren't getting relegated on the last day while relieving was fantastic. Hopped on the FPL app because of the rotation. I lost 50k ranks. So whereas I had an outside shot of finishing like top 100k, I ended up finishing like 183k, and it was like, shit, all that hard work. But I did climb like 5.5 million ranks over the course of the season, and we didn't get relegated. So the fact that I'm even still in the league is like a low bar, and I'm happy. And I proved to myself that I'm at least not washed a little bit. So I'm pretty happy. Pretty optimistic.
I like that you're talking in like 5-digit rank changes. It looks like
cry me a goddamn river. Cry me a goddamn river.
You could have listened to us once last season, and I have no sense.
I did. I literally gave you guys the keys to my team over the last like 10 game weeks, and it was still shit. So
I think
it is what it is.
Whatever. We'll pull up that graph.
I was gonna say objectively I didn't, but all right.
I hope for your sake that you have a better season, because that was tough last year, man.
I hope for our sake he has a better season.
No, that's true. That's true. I'd like us all to have good seasons this year.
Yeah, that'd be ideal, except Sharp.
Oh, actually, yeah, true. Fuck you, dude. Last season you were so obnoxious. I never want you to have a good season again.
Did you guys
as obnoxious as I may have been? I think you were also just pissed that you objectively put more data thought into it than I did, and I ended up with better outcomes.
Yeah, you're right, and I'm going to hold it against you the entire time.
The fucking form column will be my 13th reason. You heard it here first. But yeah, did you guys feel like, in a weird way, it doesn't feel like we ended that long ago? In general, like the Premier League season is fucking ridiculous. Like they get no time off, but obviously with the World Cup, it really feels like there's no time off. I don't know. For me, obviously, because of what we're just talking about, I needed a switch or like needed some time off, but it kind of doesn't feel like we got it. That said, now that the slate's clean and we're actually digging into this stuff, I'm pretty jazzed to be back. But yeah, how about you guys?
Yeah, I agree. I generally like just disassociated from soccer in its entirety in the summer, but obviously with the World Cup, you can't miss that. That being said, the World Cup was fun. So I felt like at least like it wasn't all Arsenal ball, and we got to like watch some like more interesting games and all the just sort of the emotion. So I felt like in a different way, I kind of reinvigorated my passion, because at the end of last season, I was so fed up on a variety of fronts, not least just how boring the league was. So like this year, if there's one thing I want to change, I just want more goals. Like I really just want more scoring.
I don't know if I agree with more scoring based on my current draft and recent drafts where the amount of money invested in the defense is quite high. But I do agree that the World Cup, while still soccer, was a huge like break in terms of what we were watching, which was really nice. I think the excitement around it in the US was a lot of fun. I think the getting into cities where, because I got to go to a game in Kansas City and getting to be there and watch the traveling fans, like see them interact, made me like soccer way more than I had before, and totally got me hyped, like not just for the season, but just for the sport as a whole. So I thought it was really exciting. I had a lot of fun with that particularly. And it's weird to come back now and have to try to dissect it rather than just enjoy watching it. Like that's the mindset shift for me now. And I'm really curious to see how much of that summer ball and their national teams will actually impact how they play, like going forward. Like obviously we're talking about who is going to play right away. Do people need rest? Do they need that time off when we're looking at a Holland and that sort of thing? Araya, like those guys that went deep into it. But I think it was really fun and I was excited about it.
Yeah, I think that's a nice segue into the team stuff. I don't know if this is accurate or not, because obviously Sharp and I have only been playing FPL for like 2-3 years, but it seems like there's so much uncertainty going into this that despite having done the deep dives into each one of these teams, a lot of my takeaways are like crapshoot, wait and see, like impossible to identify, the starting lineup and the tactics and who's going to be good for goals and defcons and that kind of stuff. Mac, just because you've been playing this game a little bit longer, do you feel like there's more turnover, new coaches, and obviously the World Cup impact is part of it too, but is it more than average or is this just kind of how it goes?
No, I think it's significantly higher than average. I think the typical MO is that a struggling team keeps their coach for no reason into like the new season and then fires them in like November. And all of the teams this year just said, no, we're not doing that. Maybe it was because of the World Cup. Maybe it was just because of some of the national team managers coming out of contract after the World Cup, although that ended up not being as big as I thought it would. But yeah, no, it's very unusual to have like 9 new coaches at the start of the season. Like that's just under half of the Prem has new teams. And so you can't be like, well, Manchester City are good. Also, we've lost some like very big coaches. Like this is the first time in almost like a decade where we haven't had Pep. So that's just like blowing the whole thing open.
Yeah, and I think specifically new coaches at a lot of the top teams.
Yeah.
I feel like that's as good a time as any. Let's just segue into the actual team overviews. So I can start. First team that I had drafted to take on is United, who obviously saw manager change mid-season, but still a lot of change, right? So in terms of the actual players, they haven't made as many offseason signings as you'd expect. And I feel like there may be something else to come there. United are typically splashy and they haven't really made a big move. You could argue Tielemans was that, but largely the defense hasn't been overhauled. So in terms of new arrivals, they have Darlow, backup keeper from Leeds, Tielemans, obviously Andre Santos from Chelsea, and then Rashford is back from loan. We'll see if he stays that way. High level, right? This is a team that finished third in terms of expected value. They were supposed to finish third in goals for, third in expected goals for, 7th in goals against, third in expected goals against. So finished third, probably should have finished third, which is interesting considering how often or how long they had Amarim. No major departures in terms of injuries.
Casemiro.
Notable. Yeah, Casemiro, exactly. Sorry, yeah, that really should be on here. So yeah, that's a big part of this is, right, who's going to fill in the Casemiro departure. So in terms of injuries, they have Delict, who is out for potentially long-term. Sesko, that's dealing with some sort of a shin injury and doesn't look to be like too long-term, but may not start the season. Martinez coming off of obviously the World Cup final, same type of thing. And then Ugarte, who also won't be back anytime soon. So notably, those injuries specifically open up the midfield a little bit, but it's still a pretty crowded midfield in terms of you have these new additions in Tielemans, Santos, and Rashford, and then obviously all the existing mids that we already know of, and kept Kobe Mainu, kept Ahmad, like have a lot of young players who are looking to make their way into this lineup. You have your Cunhas and Bumos, who obviously were huge signings last year, and you expect to play big minutes. So it's still a pretty tricky team to identify like the winning picks that come out of it. But this is a team who took a big step last year and in theory should be able to build on that momentum with the continuity of Carrick and some of the players. Flip side of that is it's going to be difficult to maintain that now that they're in Europe, whereas last season they were having 1 game a week. Defensively, they made no significant additions. So if there's some sort of signing, I would hope that's going to be it for them. The big question, obviously, is who replaces Casemiro in the midfield, to your point. And that could be a lot of players. It could be by committee. But obviously, from an FPL perspective, he was one of their best players. I think Tielemans is notable from a Bruno perspective. I think his skill set caters to what Bruno already does, takes some of the load off of him. And I think that may not have a positive effect on FPL points because maybe it reduces his def cons. But in terms of just some of the highlights I've watched of them preseason, it does kind of look like it gives him a little bit more license to get forward. It allows him to be a part of the attack a little bit more instead of having to do all the cleanup. And Tielemans is a really good, smart player at being able to find kind of the difficult ball to open that type of play up. So it could make him even better, but it also could take away some of his def con. I think if you're trying to go against Bruno, which is obviously a viable strategy going into the year, knowing his price and just trying to look to diversify your team, it's really difficult to do so with other United players. I think just because other than Bumo, no one is really reliable of who is going to get the minutes. And defensively, because this team is just another year older, you have players like Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw who are just in that 30 plus range. Martinez, I think, is 29. So you have a pretty old back line that you didn't make meaningful additions to. In theory, that's not going to get that much better. But you look at these opening fixtures, and I think this is about as good of a run as you can ask for. Hull and Ipswich to start, Everton and Fulham all in the first 5. So it's kind of like going into the season, you'd be hard-pressed not to at least have one United pick. Who's the most consistent United pick? Bruno, even though he's priced what he is. Bumo is probably the second best option in that sense. Actually, I'm just going to transition to the next slide then, talking about some of this stuff. Bumo is probably the next best pick, but you're also paying for a pretty high price for him. And we all know that he had quite a drought in the back half of last year. And then defensively, it's hard to trust. It's also hard to predict who's going to be the starter. Like, I don't think anyone is really guaranteed in that back line except maybe Luke Shaw. And in terms of his output, like in the graph at the left there of def cons versus XGI, like he's nothing special. He's 4.5, which is great.
It was surprisingly bad. With all the hype that was on Luke Shaw, I looked into his numbers a little bit. And I was like, oh, this isn't actually very good at all. Like, he's just he started a lot of games last season, which was amazing. Therefore, I thought he'd have better numbers. But now I'm actually a little concerned about if he's a good pick or not.
Yeah. So in terms of picks that you can actually go for, you could roll the dice on a defensive option. You could get Lamens if you're like, I just want to buy into this back line. They have great opening fixtures and I want another United pick. But I think he's 5.0. And then, you could gamble on who's going to take over Casemiro's role. With Ugarte out, there's certainly a lot of def cons to be had there. But it's kind of impossible to say with the crowded midfield, who's going to take on that role and who's going to take on meaningful roles in that group.
Can I present a possible idea just because it's something that you guys know I brought Casemiro in against your judgment towards the back half of last year, but that is because Bruno was objectively just trying to put the ball on his head every single set piece. So how do you feel about a Maguire taking kind of back over that role of header? Do you think that's a viable pick for those goal hopes?
For sure. I think that's a good line of thinking and not one to dissuade from. That said, I don't think Maguire's spot is guaranteed in terms of just being a consistent day in, day out starter. And you don't want to pay $5 million for a defender and then have them be, getting rotated or what have you. Especially when you try to think of clean sheets, needing to be on for 60 minutes and def cons and what have you. It's also worth noting Bruno's, he broke the assist record, right? And I think his expected assists were 12 and he ended up with 24 or 28 or whatever it was. So, good players are going to outdo their expectations. That's not a new thing, but it is worth noting that it may be that there was a bit of luck there. And there also may have been an element of Bruno benefited from Casemiro more than Casemiro benefited from Bruno in those set piece goals. That's me saying that, not data, but I just mean, I don't know if it's necessarily Bruno's going to continue putting the ball in the same spot and it's going to end up in the back of the net. I think you could take that either way. So all that to say, it kind of is the Bruno show. I think Maguire is that's a good thought process, but I just don't know if it's certain that he's going to start. He has competition at center back from Euro and Heaven. If I go back to the lineup that they put out, I don't know if that was today or a couple days ago, but Euro and Heaven started as the center backs. Those are obviously the youth that they have there that they're trying to bring in. Harry Maguire's age, fixture congestion with Europe, like, is he really going to play every game? Probably not. I could be wrong on that, but I just don't know if it's like a certain player when you're going into the first week of the season.
Yeah, I think the Champions League thing is really interesting for me too, because you got on one hand like a group of older, more experienced players who I think will be able to weather that pretty well. But then on the other hand, you have like a very young contingent. Like the most surprising thing to me is what you said earlier is just the complete age disparity in that team. It's either like old vets or like way too young guys like Lenny Yoro, who was out for most of the season last year with an injury and therefore really hasn't gotten bedded in. So I'm one, just shocked that United haven't been more aggressive in the transfer window. Like I think that the Tielemans signing was solid, but two, I think that we've seen so many teams in the past couple of years just absolutely crash and burn with better squad depth than what I feel like United has right now going into the Champions League. I think best case from an FPL perspective, and this is my bold prediction, is that they just don't make it out of the Champions League groups. And I don't know how realistic that is with the expanded Champions League. But if they could get back to one game of the season, unless they go crazy in the last couple of weeks of the transfer window, I don't see their squad significantly improving.
Yep. I will say one pick that defensively could work is Dallo. Like he's kind of the middleman in terms of that age. He's 27, I think. So right in the middle there. He has, as you can see here, like really good attacking threat. And that's worth noting. It's good. But yeah, again, I just don't know if you can be super confident of any of these guys being game in, game out starters. Okay.
So question, gun to your head, you had to pick one United player. Is it Bruno?
Oh, no question. I think it's more like if you have Bruno already and you want to double up, like who's the second one?
Okay, so then maybe that is a better question. Who is the second one?
Yeah. The problem is it's like hard to say, right? I want to say Bumo, but it's hard to say that I'm going to spend 20 million on two players from United. That's a lot of money to sink into that attack. And so it may end up being a defender if I can get a little bit more information before actual season start of who looks locked. So it's probably Bumo, though, is my answer. I don't know if that's different for you guys.
No, I agree. The only United player outside of those two that has entered my draft has been Lemons. Lemons. Yeah. We've been calling him Lemons for so long. I actually don't remember how to pronounce his name correctly.
Rocket.
Yeah, but yeah, just because I was like also conscious of the idea of like, maybe I could just use that potential clean sheet with the easy fixtures that they have. I think that idea really only lends itself to if you plan on wild carding really early, though. Like I'm not confident for the aforementioned reasons that I'd want to keep Lemons for a long time. So if I'm not going to wild card early, then I don't think I want to waste a transfer on a goalie.
I think for me, I'm scared about Bumo. I mean, it sounds like you're a little hesitant as well. And it's because of that fall off last year and the price that he's at. It was a pretty steep fall off, and it seems like a lack of confidence in the finishing. So I don't love that. I also would question with Sesko. Both Sesko and De Ligt were back in training this week. So them being back, then where do you put Bumo necessarily? Because he has been starting at that striker position while Sesko is out. And how much does that take away from his opportunity to score? Or does it add to it? I guess I'm not 100% sure. For me, though, the player that I'm looking at, and I asked the question about him, and I'll be honest, it's heavily influenced by known United fan FPL Harry, is Maguire back there. And I'm concerned about De Ligt coming back for that reason. And how much does he affect that backline rotation? But to me, with those early fixtures, similar thought process that you had, Mac, with Lamans, like if I can get Maguire to get clean sheets back there for 3 weeks and I get a possible header going in or some DEFCON opportunities from a center back position, like super exciting to me to do. So that's where I was looking right now.
Yeah, and you've got to think, we talked about right here, right? You see the third in expected goals for and third in goals for, or sorry, third in expected goals against and seventh in goals against. You've got to think that improves year over year with continuity with Carrick. Like that wasn't the idea behind Amarin Ball and Carrick added a little bit more of that solidity. So I think going defensive here, especially considering the fixtures, is a good play. So Lamens to me is probably in a vacuum who I'd go for the safety of just knowing that I'll have a starter, but I don't love that he's a 5 million keeper. I think either you go 4.5 or you go up to the top tier guys, and there's not really an in between in my eyes, but I could be convinced on that. So yeah, Maguire is fine. I think it's just more like you're gambling a little bit. The only other thing I will say, and then we can move on to another team, is Sesko. In terms of that consistency of somebody who's going to start and be a part of the attack, I do think Sesko may be that guy once he's fit. It's just a question of how much does this injury carry over into the start of the season. That's kind of the narrative. I'm sure you guys ran into this in research as well, is like a lot of guys, it's like, oh, that guy will be a good pick this season. I just don't know if he's going to be a pick immediately. And so I think he kind of falls in that category, whereas Abumo is like, he's going to start, like he's going to play, because Cunha's in the same boat, right? Coming off of the World Cup, you don't know whether that guy's going to get in the lineup. So
yeah, there's also just no reason to risk it. If you're unsure about someone, it's like the beginning of the season. You can make transfers
right.
later.
You just want to go with
card.
safety.
You want minutes. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So moving on to Everton, much different story. Finished 13th, expected to finish 14th, 14th in goals for, 16th in expected goals for, 6th in goals against, and expected goals against, also 6th. Not as much, or like a little bit more activity than United, but not as much as you would think with this group. You have Norgard coming in from Arsenal. I honestly didn't realize he was with Arsenal until
he was there for like a year, and it was honestly kind of a baller move, because he's like, I acknowledge that I'm not going to play, but I'm happy to go. And I was like, okay, I respect that.
So they just bring in some more support, but somebody who's obviously on the tail end of their career. You have Hackney, who's a 24-year-old from Middlesbrough. You can see, he was in the lineup today, playing in that center defensive mid. And then you have Brennan Johnson from Crystal Palace coming in here as well. It's notable in terms of departures. Grealish goes back to City. Then you have Coleman, McNeil, and Gay, who are all gone. But you also have rumors of Ndiaye leaving. He did, according to Fabrizio, nix an Al Hilal deal a couple of days ago. So the likelihood of him staying is actually maybe increased a little bit. And then in terms of injuries, somebody who's like a real FPL option and was last year is Garner. And he'll be back soon, but not soon enough for the start of the season, it looks like. And then overall, just some stuff about the team here. Defensive solidity, it's Everton. It's the same Everton as always. But then strikers, like in terms of expected minutes, I really couldn't pick one. If you put a gun to my head and said Beto or Barry, who's going to play more and who's going to score more, I have no clue. And then generally, like this is, looking at this lineup, it's pretty much the same as what we remember from last year. There's not a ton of change. This is the squad. This is what you're used to. Obviously the big miss is Jack Grealish, but they've replaced him to an extent with Brennan Johnson. I think that could be a nice fit for them on the wing. And then their opening fixtures: Palace, Bournemouth, United, Tottenham, and Ipswich. Also a really nice run. Not quite as nice as like a United or a City, but definitely a team to keep on your radar if you're not wildcarding early and you're looking in that first short to long term stretch. In terms of top picks, the obvious one is Tarkowski. He's just, he's top right of that attacking threat by DEFCON graph there, right? He's a premium defender and he's priced like it. He's 6.0. The addition of DEFCONs makes him an all-arounder. I don't think he's kind of a no-brainer in that sense, but he is 6 million, so you have to make that consideration. Keane is basically him, just $1 million less and a little bit worse. Garner is a really good DEFCON pick once he's healthy, but he's not healthy. You can see, he's averaging over 12, which is the mid threshold a week or a game. And he's priced at 6.0 this year. Last year, he was a really nice budget option. This year, a little bit pricier. And if he sticks around, he's just a solid, like I use the word solid. It should probably like decent all around pick. He's in theory, he's still on pens. He's still got some decent, attacking threat. He's, as you can see, like one of their top in terms of that, top players, but he underperformed a bit last year, was a little underwhelming at times, inconsistent. And then I think KDH is like maybe to me the most intriguing. It's worth noting he did overperform last season a decent amount, but he was the 12th highest scoring mid, which is like really high. If you really think about that, it's not far behind like Saka, and it's around the Bruno Guimaraes range. So really good scoring mid, and continues to just have really great routes to points. He's on all the corners and set pieces. He's decent for DEFCON. And looking at the pricing around 6.5, he's one of those best value picks in my opinion, as far as just looking at that group. And then I'm going to screw this up. Irogbanum.
I have never seen that written out. That's wild.
I think you did a better job pronouncing that than when you do the very straightforward names. So
there you go.
You.
Yeah.
So I think he could be a nice pick, but he is strictly a DEFCON pick. The reason I say that is, if he is a solidified starter in this squad, if you look at his DEFCONs per game, like he's up there. He's almost at 12 a game in the bottom right there. So just one of those, like, I think those are the type of players that we weren't able to identify early last year that now we have the data behind, is to say, like, who's a player who's just going to be a DEFCON guy. If he's starting and he's consistently getting you DEFCONs for 5 million, that's a nice player you can just slot in on your bench and use that money elsewhere. I think that's pretty much it here. Do y'all have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say that I see Ndai in a lot of drafts right now, and I was ultimately a little disappointed with where his season finished. Like, he started kind of hot, but when I say kind of hot, I mean he was like pretty inconsistent, and then he left for AFCON, then he never really picked up that form again. So I don't know how much the AFCON thing like influenced him, but I'm not as high on him as a lot of people seem to be. But I do think he's appropriately priced. So Ndai, I don't know. Everton feels great for like the floor raisers though, from what you're describing. Like, I think nobody's picking up Everton players for their attacking threat, really. I think it's entirely just, can we maximize DEFCONs? And through that context, I don't feel like a lot of them are overpriced.
Yeah.
I think that's a bold statement when you got my boy Barry up there leading lines occasionally, But
Yeah,
no.
you're the exception.
Honestly, for real, like, that's a joke, but like, honestly, if one of those strikers, if I knew that they were a starter, I actually would go there. Like, that's great value for one of those players on a team like this. But it's, looking through the preseason matches and who's getting minutes, as well as just thinking about last year, there's no clear starter.
No,
and they were just rotated on like a coin flip. I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, you're good. That was my no, agreed. I think they wanted Barry to really be that guy last year, and unfortunately, Beto actually, I think, put his hand up at the end of the season to say he was more of that guy than Barry was being. So I do think it's just going to be a continued rotation. But like you said, it would be lovely if one of them stuck out. I think you look at, like you said, they're floor raisers, but I feel like their overall prices have gone up throughout the midfield to be in line with the facts that they were those guys last year. And it's more now going to be searching for who is the next 5.5 mid that is not on this team. It's somewhere else, maybe a newly promoted or somewhere, who knows. But I think Tark is always just a stalwart at the back. Like, he's in my draft. He's one of my favorite guys, and I just love that DEFCON. And if he can get back to the point where he's putting headers in, I think he's a real option back there.
Yeah.
Just to pitch my boy KDH a little bit, I do think that if you give him a full season last year, his output is even better, right? He was at his peak, hot hand when he went out for a long-term injury, missed a lot of the season doing that. So again, he just has a lot of routes to points. It's like on a game where he doesn't, have some sort of an attacking return from a corner or something, he'll get the DEFCONs. Like, he's just a real dual threat. And it's more, to your point with Ndai as well, like, he's just priced well. And then the only other player I didn't touch on that actually is important here is Pickford. He's 5.5. I think he falls into that category of premium keepers. He's not, 6.0 Raya, but he's in my current draft, which doesn't mean anything. But just to say, like, I'm not opposed to trying to get some Everton coverage for that nice run at the beginning and sticking with a player like that long term. Like, he's consistent year over year. He's a great keeper. He gets a lot of saves. He's on a good defensive team, but a team that can also get run over by better teams and therefore can get a lot of save points. So I think he's always just a good option.
I also just think that they're like a known quantity. So, as Sharp, to your point, like, I think, yes, better DEFCON players will emerge. But if we know how Moyes plays, and therefore I think like if we're all looking to start with a relatively cheap budget guy, the Everton guys are so bad. And I actually don't mind if their fixtures are a little more challenging if you're not looking at like an early season wild card, because inviting pressure invites more DEFCONs. So I'm a little, I don't know, I'm a little like worried that their defense is a little overpriced relative to the output I expected, because they did finish 14th, but also they were just such monsters on the DEFCONs that it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, those fixtures in the beginning, like you could make your pick of whether you think those are going to be heavy DEFCON fixtures or not. But yeah, I think in terms of the teams I covered, this is probably the one that had the most carryover, like year over year. Solidity, coach was the same. Most of the players are the same. Style is going to be the same, and also just like not just year over year last year, Everton has been the same team for 3 years or more, right? Just defensively solid, but close to the bottom of the table, mid to bottom table.
It was nice to see them not getting like almost relegated for like at least 1 year, because almost the entire time I've been in the sport, they've just been perennial relegation candidates.
Yeah. Okay, Brighton. And this one, there's a lot going on here. So this was a really fun team to dig into, but there's a lot here. So they finished 8th last season, expected to finish 10th in goals for, 12th in expected goals for, 3rd in goals against, 9th in expected goals against. So 3rd in goals against is like what should pop out there. I feel like they obviously overperformed quite a bit their expected goals against, but they did perform like a top tier defensive team last year on the whole in aggregate. I'm curious if that would apply to their cleans, like the number of cleans they had or not, but did pretty well. In terms of arrivals, tons. So they brought in Svoboda, a 6'5" defenseman from Venezia, Struijk from Leeds, who we saw last season, Vuskovic from Hamburger SV. He's not a joke. That's a real team. There you go. But that's a hilarious thing that's a real team. Castilla, which is he's a right back from Olympiacos. Johanna is a 19-year-old right wing from AIK, and he's coming off a little bit of an injury. And then departures: Welbeck, Buonanotte, March, Milner, Webster, Veltman, and Van Heck. So big ones there obviously are Welbeck, but he was on his way out, kind of makes sense. And then Van Heck is obviously a pretty big one as well. And then you just see that in terms of replacements, they brought in a lot of defensive help and not as much help in the attack, and that's notable. Especially because of some of the injuries they have to Matoma, to Baleba, who are both mids, and then to Simas and Ferguson, who are both also forwards and attackers. So all that to say, they were a defensively solid team last year, looked to continue to build on that with some of their acquisitions. Yes, they lost Van Heck, and he's a very good center back, but it seems like they tried to replace him in folds. But they didn't add to the attack, hardly at all. So it's a young team. They bolster their defense. The lack of attacking depth is a bad thing in terms of, are Brighton going to score a lot of goals? But it makes this squad and like the minutes for some of these guys pretty easy to predict. You look at a lot of these guys and say they're going to be consistent starters. They're going to play a lot. They're going to get a lot of opportunity to score. So if you think any one of these guys could turn that on and Brighton are going to start scoring some goals, it's pretty easy to point to who that's going to be. It's worth noting, if you're going to go with one of these guys in game week 1, they have a conference league game the Thursday before, and the actual game is on Sunday for game week 1. So quick turnaround there. And then it's worth noting Hertzler named some of these young guys, Jorginho, Kostulas, Wiefer, Struijk, Kadioglu, and Svoboda as the key players for the season to like take this team year over year. Opening fixtures are mixed, but overall pretty nice. Villa, Chelsea, Leeds, Coventry, and Arsenal. Playing Leeds and Coventry in the middle there is the sweet spot, but not like, oh my God, I have to have one of these players for those fixtures. The player that caught my eye was Jorginho, because he has basically no competition in terms of minutes at forward. Like, he's going to get the lion's share of those minutes, at least for now, unless they go out and get another forward. But he only had 2.7 points per game last season, which is pretty rough. So it's kind of a bet on, like, he's $5.5 million, which is, if any of y'all have been looking out at forwards, like, there's nobody under $6 million. So he's kind of like one of those where you're like, actually, this is a consistent starter for that price. That's a pretty good deal. So I like that. Verbruggen is obviously a really popular pick, and I think for a good reason. He's $4.5 million, which is great value considering where he finished last season in terms of goalies. I think he was like the 7th highest scoring keeper or something like that. So then now that Van Heck is leaving, you got to wonder like where are the DEFCONs going, because he just ate DEFCONs for breakfast. So you have Stroik who could take over that role. You have some of these other guys that they brought in, Svoboda and Vuskovic, but it's uncertain if those guys are going to be the main starters going in. So it's not a lot of certainty in terms of who's actually going to start in the center back positions, though I'd be willing to go out on a limb and say Stroik, or however you say his name, is probably the guy, the most consistent guy. Pascal Gross, also a pretty popular pick, $5.5 million mid. He's on corners and likely on penalties. He took a penalty during preseason, leads us to believe he probably will be. So a lot of routes to points, and just 5.5. That's really good value. But he's old as shit, and they're competing in Europe. And he, like, if you look at the middle graph here, like he's right in the middle in terms of DEFCONs and XGI. Like he's nothing special. He's just kind of could be a good value pick. I'm confident in saying that one of these mids is going to be incredible value down the line of the season. Just they're all priced between 5 and 6 million. And if one of them can get on any sort of a streak of output, everybody's going to want them in their team. It's just so difficult to identify who that's going to be right now. Like it could be Iari, it could be Hinchelwood. We saw him have a pretty strong finish to the season last year. It could be Pascal Gross, could be Minte. You know, we've seen him do well before. Could be Matoma once he comes back from injury. O'Reilly, could be any one of these guys. And it's quite difficult to figure out like who's going to start producing. But once you start getting that idea, you can get one of those guys. And I think in that sense, the fixtures don't scream like I need one of these guys right now, unless you really want to target those leads in coverage tree games. So I think you can wait and see. It affords you some time. But if you needed budget options, this is probably the best team to go for that. With your Gross, your Rudder, and your Verbruggen, I think those are probably what I would say are the top 3 picks. If not, maybe one of those defenders.
Cool. Yeah, I don't want to dwell on these guys too long, considering how many more teams we have to cover. But the one thing I will say is just that it seems like the new Brighton system is to like give their new signings some time to bed in. So a lot of the guys they brought in last summer were not immediate starters, and that makes me worried about a guy like Vuskovic, who's being touted around as like a great potential budget DEFCON pick, but he's also 19. It's a little uncertain. Like if like they also, there's just so much competition. There could be ridiculous amounts of rotation, especially now that they're also, I believe, in Europe, right?
Yep. That's why I'm saying they play that, and they play a Thursday game right before the first game of the season. So I think Vifer and Katioglu could be good options because they're pretty locked into their spots. But as we've seen with DEFCON, center backs are preferable to fullbacks. So anyway,
I think.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, that's okay. The only thing I was going to say is that everyone talking about Gross online, like the FPL community, is super high on him. Brighton got 3 PKs last year. Like, I'm pretty tired of hearing that because a guy's on pins, we need to go get him. So I'm going to throw that caution out, which is just anti the community right now.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't need to worry about that for Spurs players, luckily, because we didn't get one all season. So,
wow.
I think it's more the corners.
But we almost got relegated. I genuinely believe that was a conspiracy. Arsenal supporting reps.
So wait, clock it. We got 38 minutes into the preseason pod before we got to this point.
Before there was shit talk. Yeah. So I think there's value to be had in these picks, but nobody that I'm going to be like, oh, you got to go get him right now.
Let's skip Villa because I just don't like them. No, I'm kidding.
Honestly, borderline we can, and I'll tell you why. I like high level Villa got a shit ton worse, and I don't want anything to do with them. Is high level what I would say on this team. They finished 4th, expected to finish 7th. 7th in goals for, 5th in goals against. So they overperformed in scoring goals and were about what they were supposed to do in goals against. They brought in João Gomez from Wolves, Garnacho from Chelsea, and Menzambi from Freiburg. And then departures, Luka Dean, Mosquera, Rogers, Tielemans, and Bailey is very likely to go to Hull City. That is a lot of huge holes to fill. It felt like last year this was a team that was kind of backpacked by Morgan Rogers to an extent. And one guy you could rely on for solidity in this team was Tielemans. And so now he's gone too. And it's like, wow, other than Newcastle, I can't think of another team where I'm like, a top team, I should say, where I'm like, they're in trouble. So look for them to probably, bring some new players in before the deadline closes. But not a team I'm excited about in any way. There's some injuries to Onana. European fixtures with that lack of squad depth, like with how many departures they had, are going to be really tricky for this team. I think they're going to have a rough season, genuinely.
Do you think they're going to be like the Crystal Palace of last season, who just fell off a cliff?
Yeah, honestly. Yeah. And I don't even know if it's going to take that long. Like I'm really low on Villa. I think the only saving grace there is that Emery is a great coach, and every year he has put this team in a position to, do what they did here. 4th in XG against, like, that's incredible. 5th in goals against. They continue to do that despite having what was a pretty okay season, it felt like, in terms of just watching them. They weren't an inspiring team. They had a really rough start, but they finished in that spot, and that's credit to him. Otherwise, though, from an FPL perspective, there's no one here. Maybe Matty Cash, but I would stay away from this team. Brighton, Arsenal, Hull, Forest, and Tottenham in the first 5. Actually a pretty decent run after game week 2. So you could wait a first couple weeks, try to identify like a good pick that, is going to go for one of those runs if you wanted a nice little punt. But I just, the more I looked into this team, the more I was like, ew.
The only thing I'll say is that that's 2 times where you've had Tottenham in the first 5 and gone, good run. I'm noticing.
Excellent run. What do you mean? They're a championship side that's playing in the Prem. Like,
will you just man up and pick a team already so we can chat shit back?
Unfortunately, it doesn't really matter which one I pick, Mac. They're going to be better than Tottenham. So,
well, okay.
Wow.
You know what? We deserve that.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna come to your aid, and you just talked about how good Van Heck was on Brighton and the DEFCONs he ate up, and
this is true. Did I forget to put him in there too? My God! But
what?
Yeah,
no,
Van Heck.
No,
we're on Villa.
You did it. You were good. I'm supporting Mac and saying that I think Tottenham is gonna get a lot better.
Yeah, I can't wait for their section. Watkins is probably the only pick from this team, but he's $8 million, and I just am not going to spend $8 million on a guy who's lost. Yeah, who's passing him the ball. Their defensive options, like last season, this was true as well. None of them DEFCON, so it's just like there's not really anything there. The only other option would be Martinez. If you were like, hey, I think Emery is going to continue to make this team defensively solid pick. But again, for me, 5 million keepers are I'm just like, what are you doing? Either pick the good keeper or pick the bad keeper. I feel like Verbruggen kind of broke the market in that sense, where I'm like, he's such good value at 4.5. Either take him or go with one of the premiums. I will say I think Gomez and Garnacho will have some, like, they could be interesting, genuinely. They could be kind of bright spots for the team and could be interesting players from an FPL perspective in terms of output, but not somebody that is at all worth you considering in week 1.
There's a low likelihood Garnacho ever enters my team because I don't respect him.
I forgot how young he is, though. What is he, 21 or something? 22? Like, he's really young. So like, he still has time. But yeah, I think similar to Brighton, like, you look at all the prices of and Everton, all the prices of these mids between 5 and 6, and it's like somebody here is going to be value at some point. Just DEFCON cleanups, or like somebody's got to give Ollie Watkins the ball. Like, one of these guys is going to do that. So worth monitoring, but nothing for game week 1. Okay, Nottingham Forest finished 16th, expected to finish 15th, had like 6 different coaches, 12th in goals for, so overperformed a little bit there, and were bang on with their XGA in terms of 13th overall.
Off the back of those 6 different coaches, do those last season stats even matter? Like, can you draw any conclusions from those when they were chopping and changing every 4 weeks?
Not really. And I think there was a lot of like injuries to the team. There's some turnover. Like, it's really tough to say what's going to come of this team. So they bring in Schlager into the midfield from RB Leipzig. They bring in Diomande, defender from Sporting CP. And then they lose Boley and notably Elliot Anderson to City. Injuries right now, they have Savona with a unknown return date knee injury, and Hudson-Odoi he's been coming into the lineup. Like, he's probably going to play. He just is coming off of season-ending injury. So I don't know, worth noting. The big news with this team is Oliver Glasner came in. We've seen how good of a job he's done at Crystal Palace last couple of years. He's going to come in here and hopefully add some solidity to a team that needs it. I've noticed, unlike in previous seasons, they've been shaping up with 3 at the back, or 5 at the back, depending on how you want to look at it. But that's pretty notable when you think about this. I actually think there are some picks here. I think defensively, we're kind of back to 2 years ago in my mind. Maybe not that level, but good DEFCONing, solid defensive team under Glasner is kind of what I'm imagining here. So your Milenkovic's and your Murillos and stuff like that are relevant, but going to 3 at the back means that could be different in terms of who's going to get those DEFCONs. Gibbs White is 8 million and had a really great season last year quietly. I don't think any of us owned him for hardly any time, but he had quietly a really amazing end of the year and just did really well. But he overperformed quite a bit. And I worry that without Elliot Anderson, that'll be just even more difficult for him to backpack, but I could be wrong. The forward group is tough. Like, Chris Wood used to be the guy here, and that's certainly not the case anymore. There's a lot of options there, but they're not in Europe where they were last year. So I think that's going to help this team a lot. And I would expect them to finish, closer to middle of the table than 16th. First fixtures: Leeds, Liverpool, Tottenham, Villa, Coventry. Pretty mixed bag, but interesting. Top picks. So most of them are defensive. So Nico Williams has really great attacking threat, and you can see that in terms of how they line up, right? He's basically playing wing, which is pretty nice to have from a defensive perspective. He had a really great year last year. Obviously has great attacking threat. Murillo is a good DEFCON pick, but again, looking at this 3 at the back, he's kind of playing like the left back of those 3. So is he going to get the same amount of DEFCONs that we're used to him getting? Milenkovic is probably going to be that guy. He's probably your best consistency pick from this group, just to say, hey, he's going to mop up the DEFCONs. If I believe that this team will keep some cleans, he's your guy, but he's 5.5. Murillo is also at 5.5, but I think he has, as you can see, like slightly better attacking threat. Then in terms of the wing backs, it's really Williams or Aina. And I think Williams is pretty significantly better there, but he is 5 million. So I think the more I've looked into this, I think I will probably have a Forest defender at some point, probably to start the season, to just get one of them in there. I think they're going to be good value and maybe under-owned. I think in terms of Elliot Anderson and filling that hole for this team, who's going to be the guy who does that dirty work? Sangare was a really good DEFCONing mid last year. He seems to be starting pretty much every preseason game. So I'd like to think his minutes are pretty consistent, but bringing in Schlager, he may have some threat there. It's basically what they're doing right here in that 3-5-2, right, is they kind of have 2 guys in the pivot with Sangare, Schlager, and then James McAtee is the other guy that they've been putting in that role. So I think there could be a little bit of rotation there and minutes threat, but I think Sangare is probably the safest option. And again, 5.0. So I think that's just a good. He may be a good value pick. McAtee could also be a good one to take over that Elliot Anderson role. We'll see. And then Ndoye has just been playing forward, which is worth noting. I'll touch briefly on the forwards just to say you have Awoniyi, Wood, and Igor Jesus, who are all really good options for the team, but they are going to rotate around. I don't think any one of them is going to be the consistent starter, and they may go get another forward in the market. So I initially was looking at somebody like a Wood or a Jesus, but I just think between those guys, it's going to kind of be a ride the hot hand. So I don't really know if either one's an option.
I think that the value would probably come from one of the midfield guys. Like if we can find this season's SAR, because one of the things, and I'll get to that a little later, that I noticed when I was doing my Crystal Palace research, trying to figure out what it would look like post Glasner, is that Sar was like oftentimes playing up next to Mateta as the striker.
Sure.
So if Glasner's presumably just going to lift and shift his system, which it looks like he fully plans to do. I don't know this because I haven't done research on this team, but Gibbs White, I could see dropping centrally to provide passes and Ndoye getting really high.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say. Ndoye has been playing striker or I don't know about striker, but at least 9 in some of their preseason games. So definitely could be that guy. In terms of Glasner bringing over everything, they've actually been linked pretty heavily to Mateta, so he really could be bringing everything over. So yeah, I agree with you, but I will say, like, I didn't really touch on it, but I'm trying to kill this bias, but I kind of think Gibbs White is overpriced, and I'm just having trouble looking at him as an 8 million asset. But he was like the 3rd highest scoring mid last year or something. So like, really is worth considering. I'm trying to eliminate that bias because my initial thought was 8 million for a Forest mid, no fucking chance. But he may be worth the value. It's worth looking into. He overperformed, and they lost Elliot Anderson, which I think is pretty significant, but also it's Glasner, so maybe this team gets a lot better.
I was really hoping that you would come in here and tell me who to get and convince me of one thing, because Forest is a team that I feel like I've wanted to be in, but I don't feel confident in going anywhere specifically. I would love some Schlanger to Wood action at some point this season, and to be able to get in on that.
Pause.
Dude, I can't believe I couldn't. I thought about that right as you started talking. I was like, that's incredible.
Well, here's how childish I am. I was there when you said you wanted to be in there.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Morgan Gibbs White shocked me, though. Like, as you said, he was only 14 points behind Semenyo in last season. Yep. He was 4 points above Rice. Like that.
Yeah, that's why I say really quietly, he was one of the best players.
And I'm not saying we need him right away, but that has raised my eyebrows a little bit. I am curious on the defensive side of things. Nico, I feel like, has been the guy that people are putting in their squads because of that attacking threat. I talked about it last year. I have it set up this way this year, where DEFCONs feel more important to me on the defensive side than attacking possibility. How do you feel about, obviously, he's only at 6 point something here on the DEFCON chart. So how do you feel about him as the option in the defense that you were talking about?
I think you're banking on attacking threat, right? But it really is just that there's not many players at his price point who are bombing forward as much as he is. He has so much attacking threat. So you're really banking on that. I think he scored I think it was 2 goals and 3 assists last season or something. Like, it's a defender. Let's not get too excited, but that's what you're paying for there. In terms of DEFCONs and like going for those guys, I think it's Murillo or Milenkovic, and probably Milenkovic is the easy answer. But something for like, this is almost intangible, which means I should probably ignore it, but something is drawing me towards Murillo. I think it's that his general underlying DEFCONs are better than Milenkovic's, and that he has a little bit more of that. I remember him 2 years ago being, a really central part of this team and a great FPL asset. So I think it's a toss up between those two probably. But the safe play is just take Milenkovic and run. But Williams is genuinely a really good. We can get into this when we go into our player pod, but comparing his attacking threat to other defenders, like, he's very solid. Like, it's not worth overlooking.
He's just going to have to perform very significantly from an actual contribution perspective on attack. I think that it's probably fairly easy to say that like Munoz was a pretty good pick last year. So I quickly just pulled up his numbers on the side, and he had 7 goals and assists for what that's worth. I don't know if that's a lot or a little. But that puts him as the 3rd goal contributor for the team last year. So just interesting. We're just going to have to like make sure he's really like converting those chances.
Yeah, he had 2 goals, 3 assists. So yeah, it's a defender. It's not like he's not the most attacking defender there is, but he's just, for a 5.0 million asset, that's really what it is. Like, for 5 million, he's great attacking threat. All right, moving right along. Who's next? It is City. All right, this is my last one, and then you guys can finally have the floor.
And you go, now we're in.
Yeah, so City is this one fucked me up because I started reviewing this team and I was like, do I not know anything about City? Like, am I an idiot? Like, I can't get any takeaways from this. But I really think the message of this team should just be there is so much change that it's kind of a cesspool of just like misinformation. So obviously finished second, first in goals, second in goals against. Major additions: Elliot Anderson from Forest, Monga, who's a 17-year-old mid from Leicester, and they get Grealish back from Everton. Major departures: Ake, Stones, Silva, and backup keeper Trafford. Grealish is still on injury, and Rodri is also still on injury. A lot of rumors about Rodri going somewhere, but I don't think there's, at this point, if Kalshi's putting odds on it, it's probably close to 50-50. So who's to say whether he stays or goes? The big news, obviously, is no more Pep, and that's incredibly meaningful for this team because he's been there for 10 years. So it's like the solidity of how we think about City is completely changed, despite his successor looking exactly like him. But yeah, they've been in preseason lining up in this 4-2-3-1 generally. Generally under Pep, we saw defenders were not strong DEFCONers, and maybe that continues, maybe it doesn't. Notably, Elliot Anderson and Haaland have not played any minutes preseason yet. I don't think I put too much stock into that. I think Elliot Anderson actually might not start the season. I don't know how you guys feel about the World Cup, but I'm kind of blocking off players who went really deep. So England, France, Spain, who's the other one? Argentina. So like any of those guys from those teams, I'm generally trying to be like, they're probably going to take at least the start of the season a little bit of time to come back. They may be injury risks, that type of stuff. Haaland is like deserves his own conversation that I will spare you guys for here. But it is worth noting with regards to Haaland, he's the only guy you can be like, okay, well, he's going to start. Like, he's going to play. Not the only guy, but close to it, right? Actually, sorry, I'm going to go back here. So in terms of the defenders, it's pretty difficult to predict who's going to play at what position. You have a lot of competition for those spots. Vardiol, O'Reilly, Nunez, Diaz. Who else am I missing? They've got a ton of guys. Oh, Gahey. Like, there's so many names that are in that back line. And, outside of trying to read something into what the new coach said about the pillar players, like, there's nothing. It's really, really difficult to figure out who's going to play, right? Who's going to play left back and who's going to play what position, right? Who's going to play left back? Who's going to play center back? Similar to Pep, is O'Reilly going to be used in some sort of a midfield role pretty often? Like, no fucking clue what this system is going to look like under new management. So top picks, obviously Haaland. It's tough. Like, my strategy going into the seasons has pretty much always been to avoid the highest priced player. And that's actually worked out for me, like, to start the seasons most years. But this one feels tough. Like, looking at those fixtures, Bournemouth, Palace, Coventry, United, Sunderland, like, shit, that is such a good run. I think them and United and Liverpool are probably the three teams that I'd say have the best run to start the season, which is tough because those are all the most expensive teams. But Haaland, it's hard to be like, oh, I'm going to fade him for that first five. Like, who's going to replicate his output over those five? We all know that, statistically he starts the season with a bang. I wonder though, if the World Cup influences that to any extent. Does it, shortened his off season? Does that mean that he's a little less fresh? Certainly it's shortened his preseason. He hasn't played at all. So I think that's the Haaland or no Haaland debate is like more than that's another time. But Semenyo is probably the other most likely player to start in this team, and like the most kind of like Bumo at United, where you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure that Semenyo will play. It's really hard to look at his numbers last season though and make any sort of conclusions. Like,
that's just because you hate Semenyo, dude.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to hear a word out of your mouth about Semenyo because you were
okay. What's the vibe then? You tell me. You tell me.
No, you tell me, and I'll do the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he's in the draft. He's in the draft.
There you go.
Oh, he's actually mine too. I just looked at mine.
It's tough to quantify because he overperformed quite a bit, both on the goals and assist side. And part of that, we saw this early in the season, right? He was overperforming those numbers because he was finishing like a fucking monster. But it's the majority of that time was obviously with Bournemouth, and then he spent the remainder of the season with City. His production dropped off, like not non-existent by any means, but like slowed down, which is understandable. But he's still, he was one of the highest scoring players in the game. So he's good value, or like a good pick, it seems like, right? But it's hard to say what his value is going to be to this City team. Does he have more of a season like he did last season, including the Bournemouth time, or is it really just like expanding on the time that he had with City? Does his role change at all under new management? Who's to say? So I think, again, there's uncertainty about how productive will he be. Is he worth the money is really, I think, the question, like his 8.0 price. But I think he's pretty obviously going to be central to what they're trying to do, and like has good minutes. Foden, I know no one wants to hear it, but he's a streaky player. And again, when you're looking at this run, to me, I'm just thinking like, how do I get as much City as possible? Kind of the same with United, where I'm just looking at the fixtures and saying, why wouldn't I have one of these guys? And Foden is classically inconsistent, but if he is on, he is so on. And his price dropped a lot this season to reflect kind of some of his inconsistency. I think the thing with that fixture run is looking at the first two, right? It's Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Coventry, United, Sunderland. Like, that's such a good set. If he starts producing really quickly, like, how quickly do you want to go there, right? If he hits that purple patch off the jump, like, how quickly do you want to get that guy in? So if you bring him in, you take the chance on him having that productivity, and you're early on it, you could get really, really rewarded, but you're taking a gamble.
So the only thing that I want to, sorry, were you done?
No, go ahead.
Brandon, I jumped on your throat immediately. Pause.
I've been talking for like 40 minutes, so I think.
Yeah. So the only thing that I will say, and I think this is direct rip from the Tifo Football podcast, but it's just a good way of articulating something I've been feeling for a couple of years, is because I've been watching Maresca for a couple seasons now, and nobody likes him at Leicester or Chelsea. And I know he left in like not really harmonious circumstances in both instances. But I just don't rate him that highly. If you look at him over the course of the Chelsea thing, the one time I got really excited when he was the coach of Chelsea was in the Club World Cup, and he just like took that restriction off the team. But he is just so defensively minded that I'm a little concerned that if they're not scoring from set pieces, they just might not be scoring as much. That being said, the City whole squad profile is so much better than the Chelsea whole squad profile that like it's not necessarily apples for apples, but my sort of overall prediction for City is just that they're going to start kind of hot because Maresca is going to like want to make a good impression. Then over time, as he wants more control, he's going to sort of reel them back, and we're going to start to see some of the numbers fade. So I think that it could be okay, especially with all of the uncertainty that we're going to see in the early season as so many teams are adjusting to new coaches to capitalize on some City assets. But I'm willing to predict that as the season goes on, we're going to get sour on them.
Yeah, I think maybe it's me putting too much stock in his comments about the pillars, because I've certainly got caught in that spin from FPL community as they latched onto it and started talking about it. But I believe Gvardiol is like one of the only left-footed players that they have on the back line. And the way that he played at Chelsea, Maresca that is, with bringing Cucurella up as high as he did, like Nico's right there. Like that's so easy. And so then Gvardiol just rotates back. Like I've noticed that your DEFCON chart here for defenders doesn't even go to 10. Like that's interesting compared to the other ones that no one is even close to getting it. But I do think it could be interesting if Nico's playing up and Gvardiol drops back. Does that open the door for him to get more of those opportunities? Again, I'm a little biased because I'm hoping that's happened or happens. And I totally get that they're more defensive and we'll see the changes. Like you said, Meg, I think the overall talent is just too good. Like Haaland can't not score. And I think he can't not score in the beginning. How about that?
So the only thing
Well,
that I'll
World
add
Cup.
to that, yeah, World Cup. The only thing I'll add to that though
He
is
scored a lot.
Who is Chelsea? This is a trivia question. Who is Chelsea's highest scoring defender last year?
Like in FPL or
in FPL.
Colwell.
no, he like barely played, didn't he?
So
No.
okay, sort of trick question. It's LaCroix because he's listed as Chelsea now. But that's not actually. It's actually Reece James.
Really, from an FPL perspective, you mean, or
yeah, which is like atrocious, isn't it? He has 115 points and his 128 DEFCONs. So I wish they would just give me the DEFCONs per game stat. But it's not like that good, surprisingly. I was like, I know that Chelsea had a lot of problems with red cards and Chelsea lost their coach mid-season, but I was really underwhelmed by the Chelsea FPL numbers. And I wish I had put together like this exact chart so we could compare. Because I had the Chelsea preseason expectations, but yeah, I don't know. Just interesting.
Reece James had just under 6 DEFCONs a game.
So not great. And he's the highest scoring defender. And I don't remember there being a Chelsea defender that was like a DEFCON monster. So just interesting.
2 goals, 6 assists. So I think that's probably where that came from. But yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a good point though. Like, so, okay, under Pep, not a DEFCONing side. You were saying, I think he's going to bring some defensive solidity. And I almost laughed because like, was Chelsea defensively solid? Like, I don't think so. Right. So
yeah.
Better players for sure, but like I don't know that this group is going to get better. And then to your point, Sharp, on Vardiol, I also am for some reason drawn to pulling him into my team to start the year. And I actually was kind of hoping for the opposite of what you said, right? Hopefully he plays left back and is able to, because that's where he was really effective a couple of years ago in coming up and scoring. Like he scored quite a bit from open play. So I'd like for him to be that kind of threat. Now that we're talking it out though, it's like, yeah, you're probably right. Like there's no one here who's guaranteed for DEFCONs. So it's really like, who's going to be an attacking threat? And you're trying to combo, this is old school FPL, like attacking threat with clean sheets. You know, there's probably a lot of clean sheets to be had in this first 6. And that's why first 5, whatever, which is why you'd probably want to go for as much City as you can. And so then it's like, who of this group is going to score? And so maybe it is a Nico O'Reilly. He's just 6.5 million. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, when I think about like the Chelsea players who were good last year, though, what I'm really interested in is how they use that double pivot, because both Caicedo and Enzo were pretty solid at different points in the season. I'm wondering if that increases the upside for Anderson, but it's not the player pod. We can get to that later.
Well, I mean, I noted specifically Kovacic, just as somebody who could be a cheap. He's 5.5, and you can see there like gets a shit ton of DEFCONs. And if he's a regular starter, which he wasn't always under Pep, then that could be a really great value pick in the DEFCON era. Only other players, Donnarumma, 5.5, feels like a good premium keeper, could be worth a look. And like all the uncertainty we're talking about with the backline, like he's the easy entry. So if you're looking premium, I'd definitely be thinking about him. And then it'll be really interesting to see Elliot Anderson. Like I want to talk about him in the player pod a little bit of better or worse than last year. You know, like does going to City make him better? Does it make him worse? It will be interesting. He's 6.5, and we knew what he was like at Forest. So just someone to watch, but I don't know if he's going to start the season coming off of the World Cup. All right, and that is I'm fucking done.
Last point. I think that the squad depth of the Manchester City midfield is surprisingly weak, especially if Rodrigo's like. Then who you're starting? You're starting Elliot Anderson, Kovacic, or Nico Gonzalez, like, and then you have Calvin Phillips and Reiners. Those are your only 5 midfielders, and barring Anderson, none of them are like amazing or walk into starting lineups in other teams. So just interesting. All right.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree, but I hear your point. Like, anyway, we should have fucking gone in rotation on this because I just talked for an hour or so.
Yeah, I realized that almost immediately, and I was like, it's too late now.
All right, Sharp, take us away.
All right, we're gonna start off with the heavy hitter here. I do expect to be, like I told Mac, a little faster. Just ask my exes how that typically goes. So we'll cover the most important things more from an FPL perspective, just because I only have a one-track mind, to be honest with you. But what we have here for Liverpool, I think the biggest news that is the will they, won't they of the transfer market. I mean, tied to Barcola for the entire summer, and Fabrizio says he wants us, then he doesn't want us, and who knows what. But the real issue is that at this point, the right wing, in my opinion, because we're talking about sending Gakpo out to Tottenham. He plays on the left anyway, but we have only left-footed player, left wingers that are able to play out there. But then Gakpo looked really good. I'm kind of rambling because I'm just all of my thoughts on Liverpool are coming out all at once. When you look at them in total, I think there's a lot more change with Areola obviously coming in and Slot going out. I'm personally really excited about that on a team. I think you're going to see a lot more pressing. You did see him say that his players can only play for 30 minutes right now because Slot absolutely murdered any sort of conditioning that they had. And you can see that in Ekitike's injury last year. He didn't do sprints. And then when you tried to sprint, your body doesn't want to do it. So that sucks. But I'm excited about the pressing change to get back to more what Liverpool has been in the past. That being said, I'm not super high on the guys up front because of the uncertainty about the right wing and who's playing. I'm concerned about their conditioning and if they're going to be able to play the entire time. That being said, they have really good fixtures to start. So Newcastle, Forest, but then you have Ipswich, Fulham, and Bournemouth. I expect Bournemouth to still be relatively up and down. So opportunity there. Newcastle, we haven't fully touched on, but just got worse. Ipswich and Fulham kind of speak for themselves there, as well as opportunities for points. When I look at the players to truly target, I'm unsure. Honestly, as a Liverpool fan, I would give you the wait and see approach on this entire team. The reason for that is their price mainly. So even though they have some solid fixtures up front, their price is expensive. Isak at 9 million, Sobo at 7, Wirtz at 7.5. They're expensive for what they've done. They've neither Sobo nor Wirtz have put 10 goals in a Prem season, and we're going to pay for them now. I don't fully understand the hype behind it at this point before we see him come to life.
Yeah, that's been my biggest criticism of Liverpool players when I try to fit them into my draft is even if I'm high on Areola because I think he's a good coach, your prices are ridiculous relative to the performances you put in last season. And I know you guys finished like 5th, which is still great. It's just not where the club wanted to finish. And I know that sometimes these prices are like lagging. Like it took like 2 seasons in 17th in a row before the Tottenham prices started falling. But it's just like, really? Frimpong is more expensive than Keane from Everton? Like, yeah. Dude barely played. That's wild. Like, he's just getting carried by the badge.
Oh, 100%. There's no doubt about it. I think with the questions that you have around this team, the only person that I can look at and say, yeah, I can see why you're paying for him, that makes sense, is Van Dijk. I mean, he put up 175 points, FPL points last year. He had one of the, if not the highest influence rankings on the game from an FPL, like, tracking perspective. So I can understand if you're going there. I personally even think there's better options. I think it got not necessarily crowded, but it's a mix of crowded and questionable on that back line. Not that that's going to affect Van Dijk, but just as a total, as you look at that team, we did get Arejo to come in, the old captain over at Barca, which could be exciting. My dad tempered that real quick by saying he's Kanate 2.0.
Yeah,
so,
you're gonna hate him. I think he's pretty good, but he makes some stupid decisions. And I saw that announcement. I saw this tweet that said, "He's the GOAT, worst player in the world, back to back." It's like perfect summation.
Yeah, that checks out. The overall remainder of this take, I would say, is I'm pretty high on Isak eventually because Ekitike is out until the beginning of January at the earliest with that torn Achilles. So see if he comes back. Isak is our only striker at this point. So I think if this team is going to function and plays the way they can play, which is aggressive and pressing and exciting, Isak could be a target, especially as you look at, I believe it's around game week 4, flipping. I personally might be going away from Holland at that point. Okay, I can go down 6.5 million to Isak. All of a sudden, he doesn't seem that expensive if he is producing at a high level, and Liverpool seem to have an attack. That could be exciting to me. Sobo and Wirtz, go for it.
No, you finish out.
Yeah, no, the last thing I was going to say is just of the last people to consider, Sobo is a great player in a football, like soccer watching sense. Absolutely fantastic player. From trying to figure out how he's going to score. He has possible routes to points, but he's never been a big scorer, and I don't know why people are so high on him now. So I would not put much stock into that personally. I would go elsewhere. And Verts, you're again banking on a promise that he had last year that never got developed. So I would love to see it.
Sorry, jumped in.
No, I was done. You're good.
Totally. No, you were done. You were literally talking. That's my bad. I admire your bravery for putting the highlight video. You guys getting pumped by leads. Just real bold. But two, I totally agree on your Slabazai point. Like, I saw a tweet, and I wish I could credit the person, but it was like a month ago at this point, that said, like, I feel like he's the type of player who's just going to dribble in points periodically and like really frustrate managers. And I'm like, I so agree with that. I will say I did watch this preseason game where you guys got pumped by Leeds, and I was actually pretty impressed by how central Verts was playing, and he was really getting up there behind Isak. So I don't think I'm going to pick him up immediately, but he is actually a decent price this year, and I could see that being pretty beneficial. The other thing is that we know, because of Bournemouth and their high line and just how aggressive their press is, that there is probably going to be a pretty significant DEFCON increase because they don't mind conceding possession. So I'm very curious to know if like Araujo just starts to become like a DEFCON monster like the James Hill of last season.
I think the problem with that is I don't expect him to start at center back. I expect him to start at right back. So I guess two of the things that I didn't cover, thank you for bringing up Verts playing where he should be playing. I do think that could be a benefit and exciting. He's playing the wingers. I think we talked about in the chat. We've seen much more tight than they were playing before on the outside, which if we do keep a Gakpo could be exciting for him. But like we said on that back line, Jacques and Arejo as the other ones, like I think it's going to be more of a question and wait and see who proves themselves to get the minutes where you want them to get the minutes for that DEFCON.
Yeah, I think it's a really good summary.
Just on the point of you looking at the squad and kind of saying, I don't really want any of these guys. The problem is these fixtures are so good. You're both lying if you're telling me you're not going to start with a Liverpool player. So it's
I literally don't have one in my lineup right now.
By game week 1, you'll have one. I guarantee it. But regardless, I think especially Isak could be really meaningful if you start toying around with the no Holland drafts. Like, that's who you're going to go to almost certainly, right? They have such a great start. And to your point, he doesn't really have the competition of Ekitike. So if you think they're going to score, he's a great pick. It's just you probably can't fit him and Holland in. So that's kind of the sacrifice you're making to
Holland drafts are so juicy. Everybody dropping Holland at the beginning of towards the end of the last season actually made the game just so much more fun. I looked back at some lineups on a slight tangent. I looked back at some lineups to try to get some inspiration. And then I somehow completely forgot that we all didn't have Holland at the end. So I was like, well, these teams are amazing. How did we do that? And I was like, well, that's because half of our team is held up in one guy. So then I went back to game week 20 and was looking at the pods to look at the lineups. I was like, oh man, I hate having Holland. It makes you sacrifice in so many other areas. The dude's just a beast.
And especially if you're in the boat where I've started out of Holland and Bruno, then you're just, you're tying up so much money in two players that you're just looking for like 5 million picks everywhere. So anyway, I think if you had to pick one, Sharp, who would it be?
If I had to pick just any player
to start the season. Yeah. Like you had to put one in your lineup.
Yeah. Van Dijk. I had Isak in my first initial drafts with Holland, and you just can't make it work. Or you have to say, I'm not going United. Like those are pretty much your only options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'd say Barnes personally, but the midfield's so crowded. I don't know if I'll actually be able to get him in. And that's a very optimistic pick.
Yeah. All right, I promised brevity, and I did not provide because it was my team, and I went off the rails so fast, and that's going to happen. Ooh, I forgot Sunderland was next. That's exciting. Okay, so the fun thing about Sunderland to me is that nothing changed. In a world where we're talking about new coaches, everything happening differently, and new players, they have no injuries currently. They had no transfers out of note that were important to their team, and so far they have not had any transfers in. I will say one of the things that has been discussed early on, and I believe is actually the title of the highlight video that's in there, is Trey Hume and the fact he is listed as a defender and playing on the right wing. The one thing that I will say is they have been tied to winger help, so I would not be fully shocked if they try to get a winger in before the season actually starts, which could significantly derail from that Hume idea. Um, the one thing that I would say really changed is that they are now playing in Europe, which is crazy for them. Like coming up, getting promoted, finishing 7th, and now going to play Europe without making any changes to your squad. Also having 12 players that just played at the World Cup coming back. You guys made a comparison to Palace already. I was going to make the comparison to Palace from last year here, where I don't think the squad's going to be able to handle that many games. I think they overperformed significantly. I believe their expected points was actually bottom 3 and should have seen them relegated again. So the fact that they were able to do what they were able to do last year isn't crazy. I don't see it repeating. I do not see it sustaining at least very far into the season. That being said, look at those first 3 fixtures. I mean, they have Ipswich, Fulham, and then Brentford. Like, that's pretty enticing to me from how good their defense was last year. So I'm not even going to go on the attack. Yes, I think Brobby could be a pickup there. He's a locked striker. You know he's going to play. If they're going to put balls in, he's probably going to be involved in some way. You see some people going Lefay because he's a $6 million. Obviously, he's super involved, has some decent attacking numbers there, and he's on pins, which is exciting. But really, I think the heart of this is going to be in their defense. And I say that because you have guys like Mukiele, who I think we all had at one point last season, granted much cheaper than he is this year. And then you have a Ballard who is just really a DEFCON monster, averaging 11 per 90 last season. That's pretty insane. So I'm looking at those guys as I start the season with these nice fixtures, banking on 2 clean sheets in the first 3. I'm getting optimistic. And Ballard hitting DEFCONs, like that seems super exciting to me. I think even you could look further down at Alderete. If he's going to repeat, he was also averaging 10.1 DEFCONs. And that does speak to how much they were allowing that pressure onto them for the entirety of last season. So I think it's wise to attack them early, have some players in there. I'm going to be honest, as much as I was talking about the downside of them down the line, I do have 3 in my draft right now, and I could see you arguing for 4 to 5 of them at least being in your draft.
I was going to argue for 1 to 0.
No,
-1.
I don't think you can. Mukiele is more expensive. Still so like
he's also injured right now, worth noting.
I didn't see anything that there was any concern of him actually being able to start, though.
Yeah.
But possible. That's a fair point. But I think those DEFCON numbers just get me too excited in this early showing. And then I think you get off them as the season progresses into game week 5, 6 plus.
I'm just concerned about their prices. I feel like they were amazing last year as value players, but I have so much concern for the reasons that you opened up with about the regression. That like for 5.5 mil, given how expensive a lot of the defenders are, I'm thinking that needs to be like a top spot.
Jesus.
Like, and if I just look at some of the other 5.5 mil defenders right now, I mean, you're looking at Van Heck from Spurs, you're looking at Munoz, you're looking at Mitchell, you're looking at Keane for 5 mil, you're looking at Brentford's Collins for 5.5, you're looking at Nico Williams. He's like put into like a whole different tier than I feel like he admittedly deserves to be there. But I'm concerned about, like you said, the overall quality of Sunderland relative to the price.
Yeah, I think you made the likening of them to Palace, and I think it's actually more Forest, where like I think the collapse could be brilliant, like really, really ridiculous, because it's kind of the same in the sense of, right, you have a team that overperformed and isn't capable or like isn't set up to handle Europe, and they're in Europe. And then you also have, like what you said, the expected stuff, right? Part of the reason that these defenders were so good last year is that this team kept a surprising amount of clean sheets. They were expected to give up 60 goals and they let in like 42 or 48. I don't remember what it is, but like something ridiculous. And so, the weight of Europe plus just natural regression plus, to Mac's point, the prices, like, yeah, it's tough. Like I'm a Dan Ballard lover, but that is 5.5 for Mukiele is heinous. That's highway robbery.
And just like I can tell you guys from experience, like it's been a little strange because last season that the promoted teams were so good, but second season relegation is very real. I mean, for promoted teams, the teams that come up very often get relegated immediately. I mean, think about the Leedses of the world who were relegated after the second season for a little while. So that's just like a normal phenomenon. I actually think that most of the guys who got promoted could immediately get relegated, so there might be some cushion, but I wouldn't be surprised if they finished at the bottom. So
I'm sad that you guys aren't as passionate about them as I am.
I know, I feel bad. I'm like, we're just crapping on it. You're like, no, these guys are great. And we're like, no.
These are all extremely valid points, and I appreciate it. I've just been on the Sunderland hype train because you look at it, and yeah, Mukiele's definitely expensive now. There's only one guy that scored more than him last year. That's 5.5. Everyone else is 6, 6.5, 8. Like, he is appropriately priced. I look at a Dan Ballard, 11 DEFCONs per 90 on a guy that's going to play. Like, give me 4 points each week minimum.
I think that is an interesting point, though. As you said, he is still appropriately priced for his price. It's just that all of the defenders got so much more expensive because DEFCONs were so powerful last year. So I think a really big debate that we're going to have this year is how to squeeze the most value out of our defense, given that Gabriel's 8 mil.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that you are presenting a strong argument. I'm just a little more bullish on some of the other teams that we mentioned.
I get it.
Fair point.
I think, yeah, all good things or good points.
Okay.
Hit me. Where are we at next? We're at Leeds. All right.
I love that yellow, just must say.
It is your favorite color, so that makes sense. But here we are in the Leeds. Some transfer news, without a doubt. I think they've done some great work in the transfer portal. Obviously, Harry Wilson, I think, is the big one that is coming in. Most people knew it, unlike some of us here, but Harry Wilson did come in, so that could be really exciting for them on the wing. That's a huge upgrade on the lineup that it's showing. It's showing him as more of a true striker. I expect him to play a little more wing than what is listed there. But we'll see. He was actually a lot higher than I thought last year in total points. I believe he was in the top 7 for total points last year, and now he's only improved, I believe, opportunity here. But otherwise, they did see James Trafford come in. So what was City's backup goalie is most likely moving into their starting goalie. Not really most likely. I would fully expect that to happen into that starting goalie role. So he is priced at $5 million though. So I don't see much of an opportunity there. It will be interesting to see how he controls the back line with someone like Struijk leaving them as well. But they are bringing in Muharemovic, which could solidify that back line as well and provide another possible DEFCON opportunist at a lower price point. Otherwise, when I look at him, I feel like there's not a ton that has changed. Something to call out is Goodmanson is hurt to start the season. So while listed here, that's the reason he is in red. We expect him to miss a couple early games there. Beehole has also been out, but he is expected back. Dude, I don't know how you want to say that. I tried.
Sorry, you can't. But between this
I got it.
And y'all doing Liverpool's coach as Areola, I'm just not mature enough for this.
Wait, how do you say Areola?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you're saying it wrong. It just when Sharp's like, well, when we talk about this team in Areola, I just can't I understand. There's also a guy actually named there's a keeper named actually Areola. So I'm 5 years old. It's nobody else's. Continue.
Yeah.
No,
I was laughing at that one. That's ridiculous.
Dude, how did you say his name?
I think it's.
Are we talking about the same
player? Because which one are you? Where did you get Beehole from?
Bijol. I was trying to give the light J sounds, like the huh. It didn't work.
I like it.
I'm trying to be cultured. This is what I get.
Yeah. He learned that in Spanish class. Continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could be right.
I wouldn't go that far, but thank you. The thing that I will call out here, while looking at the team, I wouldn't say outside of Wilson, much of the threats have changed. But what I will say is I think that from an FPL perspective, they're still nicely priced. Wilson being the most expensive mid at 6.5. I think you have very good options at a stash or stack, however you want to say that one now. And Ampadu as well coming in there. I mean, Ampadu averaged 11.9 DEFCONs per 90 last year, which is right on that cusp for that midfield. So if he's getting the minutes, that's really nice. The main guy that you're going to get here is DCL. I think he's been all over the place. It makes sense. He is, I think, the best 6 million striker, and he's pretty locked. Not pretty, he is locked for minutes. He's going to be the guy. So from that perspective, they also have some nice fixtures starting out with Forest, Brentford, Brighton, Newcastle at home. Like those all feel like opportunities for DCL to put some points in and build some chemistry with Harry.
I also want to add to your price point that the guys I've seen touted around on sort of the FPL community are Ampadu because he's kind of a DEFCON monster, and Rodon because for some reason he's been playing up there next to Calvert-Lewin. Like I watched one of the preseason games and he was bombing up the wings so high. I was like, what are you doing? And then we know Joe Rodon's a pretty decent DEFCON guy. So I really like them from their value perspective. The other thing is I hadn't heard of this concept before, so I need to research it a little more, but I really like the idea of Wilson playing up front as like a double striker because I love me an out of position player. And if Wilson can get on the ball and in a goal threat position more, but he's still listed as a mid, so he can still get the clean sheet points and his DEFCONs might decrease, but if his rate of scoring goes up, that's a pretty good price for that.
I mean, he wasn't a DEFCON guy anyway, so I think I don't think we're losing anything there.
So
yeah.
Ampadu's interesting as shit. I didn't realize he was as good as he is.
No, his DEFCONs are crazy, dude. He's been averaging like 16 or something ridiculous too in the preseason. It's been nuts.
Wow. Paint me interested.
Yep.
Things to look at.
All right. Leeds is done, I guess. Any other thoughts?
Sorry,
I don't know.
You guys are waiting on me.
No. Oh, yeah. I was like wondering who had to click.
Gently nudging us along there. Okay. So moving into Fulham. I mean, I think they were like my second to last pick because to me, Fulham
kind of boring.
Yeah, that's what they are. They just
They're a really boring team. That's so real.
I know. That being said, they do have some changes. RB, to your point, now we're getting a little crazier. Arbeloa. So
that was pretty good.
Thank you. Coming over from Real Madrid, he wants to press. He wants to be fast and fluid. He wants to play through the wings. So I think that is going to be a slight change and exciting. Maybe, hopefully, who knows? They did have some transfer news. Obviously, we've talked about Diop, or we might have seen Diop as a 4 million option. So he's out. Harry Wilson is out. Lukic is out. From who's coming in, and maybe who you guys have seen around is Kusi Azare at 4.5. That being said, I don't really expect him to get many minutes now. So when we look at this, I'm not excited about them, especially with those opening fixtures. Chelsea, Sunderland's green, but I don't think they deserve to be green when they're playing the likes of Fulham. I still think that even if they do regress, as you guys think,
it's still the mighty Sunderland.
That's what they are. That's what I'm saying. And then you have Palace, Poole, and United. I don't think there's any reason to be on a single person on this team. There's just no one that puts up that many points. There's no one that's super exciting. You have a left wing back on pins. So, like, what am I counting on there? It's a lot going on here. And I would say stay off to see if anything happens. And if, maybe one of these guys is the 5.5 or the 5 or the 4.5 guy that sticks out this year and does something, that would be exciting, but no reason to touch him now.
I think you summed it up really well. Those opening fixtures are heinous. They actually turned pretty good for a brief bit in 6 through 10. The only more challenging team they play in there is Villa, who we have some questions about, but other than that, it's all 3 promoted teams and Newcastle. So that's pretty solid. But I think to your point, why jump early on them if they're so cheap? I mean, they'd be so easy to get into from just about anybody.
I think the only one I want to ask about is Sessegnon. Just looking at DEFCON numbers, he averages over 10. I would assume he's in competition with Robinson for that starting spot, but I've heard a lot of transfer rumor on Robinson. So maybe just somebody to your point, I don't think there's a rush to get any of these guys with the fixtures, but Sessegnon could be an interesting one of if Robinson leaves, he takes over that spot. DEFCON, he's got some pretty good attacking threat too.
So the only thing with Sessegnon that I'll say is that are your DEFCON numbers from last year, or are they from preseason?
Oh, was he classified as a mid last year?
I'm not sure, but I think I cannot pronounce that for some reason. Arbeloa I don't even think that was right. I think that guy, the new coach, the one who replaced Marco Silva, who shall not be named, wants to play a back five as Sharp has pictured. Therefore, if Sessegnon is going to roam, I wonder if his DEFCONs are going to go down. And he's not like an amazing attacker. I know that because he used to play for Spurs.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because when you look at him like in the back line, again, take it into consideration with a 4.5 price point lens, I think, on him. He was a 10.8 DEFCON, could go down like Mac was saying, but at least out of their defense, he was the highest at a 0.17 XGA or goal involvement. So it's possible. It was pretty split between goals and assists, honestly, within that.
Yeah, what's interesting is I'm looking at this these preseason games, these club friendlies, and they did line up at a back four today against Malega, but I don't know if that's worth anything.
Well, and he played a lot last season because Robinson was out so long with injury. So like he was playing left back and still getting those DEFCONs at that role. It's not like it would be a role shift for him. So
well, it would only be a role shift if he turns into more like a left wing back as opposed to just standard left back and a back four. So the problem is with these preseason friendlies is some of them are behind closed doors. They've only played 2, and in one of them he played a back four. So you literally can't tell because there's no other fixtures lineup for the other fixture.
To Sharp's point though. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, there's no rush. Like if you're gonna get a player like that, the only reason you'd have him, what is his price? Is he 5 or 4.5? It's 4.5. The only reason you'd have him is like he could be a nice like, okay, I'm gonna stash him, 4.5 like bench player type thing, but there's not really a rush to get somebody like that. Especially that only becomes an option in my eyes if Robinson is dealt. Not if Robinson's there, I'm not touching him.
Yep.
All right. F Fulham.
Yep. They were
F Fulham.
Also like the only one to not post official highlights on their own channel. They were posting the inside Fulham, whatever access nonsense. So for that, bad vibes, another reason. Thumbs down.
Bad vibes. It's been ruled.
Fulham. Yeah, you feel about Fulham how I did about Villa. So it's fair.
I think that's how everybody feels about Villa, dude. We hate them.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Bournemouth. 2 headlines here. Number 1, first European appearance for them in the history of Bournemouth, I believe. So they're going to be playing in the Europa League this year. Which
I just don't know why he would Iraola would leave such a big club like this with so little upside.
I think Bezos went and gave him some money to do so.
Yeah.
Also, thank you all for having Amazon Prime. That could be nice in the future.
I will be canceling it if you could take it over. Support local.
Wow. Go ahead and pay for our Barcola transfer. I'll take that. That'd be fine.
No, that's still the
it's the fund of Coutinho. No, we still have 23 mil left, actually. Fun fact. Okay, so not to derail too far, but that being said, the other hot headline of Areola is obviously him leaving. Marco Rose is coming in at the manager position. He was at Leipzig, last coached 2 seasons ago there, so did not coach in a league last year. He's looked at as a counter-pressing, aggressive, and very vertical style when he plays, but he only had a 55% winning percentage at Leipzig as well. I'm not expecting him to come in and progress this team. I fully expect a regression with the change at the head, as well as like the players that they lost and the fact they're going to play in Europe this season. That's going to be brutal. So touching on who they did losing Senesi, I feel like is the massive one at the back, which I think is super interesting for Mac to talk Tottenham because they have 3 high quality center backs that they could play. So I'm super interested to see how that comes to fruition. They also lost Traore. Jimenez came out as well, bringing in Sanchez, Rodriguez, and Silva. When I'm looking at this as well, the injury, I guess I should include, Krupi did have foot surgery as well on the 29th, so don't expect him back. Arojo had, again, I can't say the names. He had thigh surgery on August 6th, so I don't expect him to come back. So just injuries that could affect things as well. Those were opening run of fixtures. I would say Newcastle's a highlight in there, but I'm not touching that at all. So for those reasons, I'm staying pretty far off these guys. Interesting people to call out once fixtures maybe become a little more favorable or if they look to play well. Their backline could still be an option. I'm looking at Truffert, one of the best attack influence guys, I believe, in the game. Put up 165 points last year. Defcons are a little low at 8.1. The problem with the rest of that defense is that Hill, what was a darling last year at his price point, is now, I believe, 5.5 mil to own. So that 11.2 DEFCON per 90 just became a lot more expensive for you to try to fit into your team. Other guys here, like we mentioned, Krupi's out with the injury, but Ryan, Tavernier in the midfield. I have a hard time looking at, like, who do I want to go here to get points? Ryan came in last year at that midseason transfer and proved to be pretty exciting, racking up 67 points within just that small portion of the season or half the season. My summation here is it's really hard for them to start out. I think the wheels are going to fall off a little bit as well as they play in Europe and have the new manager.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is just another team, too, that is so clouded by new coach that you're like, we have all of these great data points from last year and no idea if they're going to continue.
Yep.
Guys of note to me, Scott, again, just because he was solid DEFCONing last year, and True Fair. But yeah, I think this is another one of like, wait and see. There's no reason to jump on them early. There's nobody here that's screaming, you have to have them. Evan Nielsen?
I was never convinced by him last season.
At 6 million, I think you have better options. I think you could look at the.
No, I totally interrupted. I don't know. I keep doing that. Continue.
No, I don't care. It's good, but DCL. I mean, if you're going to fill a 6 million forward spot, why are you not going there? I think Broby, despite what you guys think, would be a second option at the 6 million, and I think you could even go. If you're going to go at that point, like I think you just kill a forward slot and bring it up to a João Pedro or someone else.
Yeah, sorry. You guys are just making such good points that I like want to agree. But I also just think that with that opening fixtures, like why? Like you could get them later, but as Sharp said, DCL same price, better fixtures, more of a known entity, at least at the start of the season.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it a thing. It's not. It's just not a thing. I think you guys are right.
It might be. It just as soon as game week 2, we just don't know.
Yeah, I think that stretch there of 2, 3, and 4 looks good, but to your guys' point, like, do I trust Bournemouth? No. Do I trust Evan Nielsen? No. It's really just that if Krupi's out, he has good minutes, but no, I think we can wrap this one up.
The only thing I'll say.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, as I was going to say, vibes wise, I think Brentford are a better team than we gave them credit for last season, like vibes wise last season. So I don't know if there's easy on paper for like a presumably mid-table team like I imagine Bournemouth will be with a new coach, but who knows?
What about Petrovic? Could he be a good competitor for Verbruggen at that 4.5 price point?
For me, I would actually rather look at Akinski there and get that little rotation. I think, Petrovic did have some nice scoring last year, but going back to losing Senesi and kind of losing that head of your defensive line, like I don't expect them to be as clean.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I'll move it right along then. I think we're agreed that there's not much there. And there's probably not much on this team either.
Fuck these guys. Move on.
Yeah, no, that's a fair assumption. Unfortunately, despite what we want to say about them, their back line remains a question, and they've had some intriguing plot points, I feel like, in the offseason, more than we would care to admit. But no secret who Arsenal is, playing in the Champions League, reigning champs, all of those things. But what we did see or will impact the beginning of the season, you have Saliba and Timber both out. So that creates a lot of questions in that back line. Have you seen in their preseason games, the solidity without Gabriel is negative. They just let goals go in. With him in, it's been slightly better, but overall has been in shambles. That being said, I expect them to be much closer to the form of last season in total. It's going to be trying to figure out who are the guys that are going to be locks to contribute to that outside of 8 million Gabriel. Before we jump into that, I do want to touch on the transfer news. So Luke talked about Norgard heading out. They also lost Trossard. But the exciting things that they did do were bring in Bruno G, as well as Solis on the wing. And to me, I'm going to say that Solis provides more excitement or opportunity out there. That is if he gets minutes fairly consistently. But what he's shown in the preseason in terms of both goals and assists, I believe he has at least one in every single game, which speaks volumes. He also, when you look at where he came from, he was in the Belgian league, so I'm not saying it's the best, but he did win Player of the Year there, put 17 goals and 23 assists in league play all alone. Like pretty solid numbers no matter who you're playing against. And like I said, has had a really nice preseason, and he's only $6.5 million. For context, that's the same price as Eze. And like outside of Eze's like hat trick last year, like he didn't inspire much once he moved to Arsenal. So this feels like a really cheap way to possibly get into their attack.
So I pulled this up just now, but just to add to your point, I hadn't heard of this guy. It's like kind of weird when a top team signs a guy I hadn't heard of, barring City, because they just love to pull great players out of their ass. He's just a cross merchant, dude. So this says to me that Arsenal are going to be as big as they were last season in terms of set pieces. So just to lend to all of your points, which were great points about this guy, I'm also interested in him, mostly from an assist perspective, though.
Yeah. However he gets me points, he can give me points. But I agree. Like, that was a super interesting chart. I appreciate that one. The other $1 million question I feel like we have with them, aside from putting Raya back there, who I finally looked, they had 19 clean sheets. Like, there was a reason it felt automatic last year. That's ridiculous. If you don't want to go 6 million, you probably don't want to go 8 million for Gabriel. And I would say Gabriel's really the guy that is going to be the safest pick, but with looking at 12 million, 15.5 million elsewhere in Bruno and Haaland, you got to kind of look at that 5.5 million and see who's going to be filling in for Timber and Saliba kind of to start the year. I think it's pretty safe to say that Mascara is going to be coming in, and then you're between Calafiori and Hincapié. I believe that Arteta likes Calafiori a lot more. That being said, I could still see it being where he plays 6 or 7 games out of 10. So do you want to pay 5.5 million in your back line for someone that's going to play that many games? Granted, by that logic, he's going to have 3 to 4 clean sheets, as well as Calafiori does have great attacking threat, averaging 0.18 XG per 90 last year. That's pretty great for a defender. So I know, Luke, you tasked me with beforehand, who would I go to in this defense, or trying to figure out the defense. I personally am not ready to go to Gabriel at 8 million because I don't think I can fit him in. It hurts me to say because I kind of want him, but I think there's money to be spent elsewhere. So I'm looking at Calafiori as someone who snuck into mine between the remaining options that are there at 5.5.
I have Mascara slotted in, but I am a little concerned about the balance that we saw last season of Saliba, but just basically not defconning ever. And I know Arsenal is such a possession-heavy team that I think the benefit of the Arsenal guys was the automatic clean sheet, sometimes defcons, but mostly actual attacking threat through set pieces. Therefore, in the 5 minutes you've been talking about Arsenal, you've convinced me to switch over to Calafiori. I just am also concerned about the rotation. I do think that Hincapié will rotate a lot into that left back position, and Calafiori's had some pretty consistent injury issues, so a little strange.
I wonder if the days of double Arsenal defense are a little more numbered. Just because you don't Gabriel, it's like if you're getting Gabriel, it's hard to get another one. And then so what you're doing, Mascara or Calafiori and Raya, it just seems like it's a little bit more difficult than it was before. But
there's also a world where, like, you know, if Haaland is someone we exit early after like game week 4, then maybe that's our opportunity to get Gabby. Like maybe it's we just can't fit him right now. But
I think a la Isak, it's like if you get rid of Haaland, it's like shit. Yeah, I'll take Gabriel. Like, why not?
Isak and Gabriel,
then
right.
Yeah. And then it's like a differential of the highest scoring defender from last year, which is crazy to say. But Rice and Saka, Sharp. Thoughts?
Yeah. Thoughts are what my thoughts are always going to be on Saka. I'm going to avoid him despite what the expected numbers say about him and how involved he does look to be. At 9.5 million, I simply can't fit. If I couldn't fit Isak in at 9, I can't fit him in at 9.5. Not saying they're the same point player, but that being like, I just don't have the money for that if I'm taking Bruno and Haaland like everyone else is. So for me, I don't view Saka as like a must-have by any means. If you tell me you have him over someone else, yeah, like fair, that's fine. I don't want to watch him get injured.
Yeah, I was just gonna say he's made of glass, and he
Yeah.
played on England's World Cup team.
Yep.
And
100%.
he was managed. I don't know if it was tactical, but they didn't even play him in the semifinal. So that doesn't.
Bro doesn't
well
actually
for,
play the sport.
Yeah. Which, talking about a winger that's not playing, is a whole new reason to look at Zoli's too.
Is Zoli's going to start over Martinelli though? Is my question. Like, or is it going to take a little while for him to bed in? Especially because I'm not going to make shit up. I don't know his age at all.
I unfortunately forget, so I don't know it either.
24.
There you go. But I would say, given the amount of time he's played already in the preseason and the effect he's had and the results that have been shown, I, as a human being, would not be super scared of playing that. Now, if Arteta doesn't want to do it, we'll see.
All right. I think you did a really good job on this one. This was one of the harder ones to cover, just considering they're one of the top teams with stability.
Yeah.
Is Havertz going to share a lot of his time with Gyok, do you think? Do you think it makes neither of them an option?
I don't know if either of them were options if they were the starter. But, yeah, I would expect there to be some rotation if Havertz stays healthy, which is one of the biggest ifs, I feel like.
They also they don't score open play goals. Therefore, headers. It would have been nuts, as much as I hate this team, if they had gotten Vinicius. That would have been crazy. I'm so glad they didn't.
Yeah. I think, Luke, at the 7.5 price range, if I'm going up to that from a 6 mil, I'm going to João Pedro before I'm going here, and I'm not having a 7.5, 15.5. So I also don't want to watch him try to Gyökeres with the ball at his feet. Oh.
No, yeah, I fucking hate Gyökeres. But maybe Havertz I could get on board with. But yeah, João Pedro, you and everybody else. Moving right along.
I repeat what I see. That is about it. Okay, so touching on Brentford, I did pick some real random middle of the road teams in here that I wanted to try to figure out a little bit more about, but man, I don't know how much they are going to contribute to the FPL landscape real fast here. That being said, major changes at Brentford. We did see Sangari come in. Callum Wilson came in as a very backup tertiary role. Jadon Anthony came in. In terms of losses and contributions to FPL, nothing to be super worried about. This will be their second year under Andrews as a manager, so I would expect a slight uptick there, just consistently with manager and getting to implement more of his style and how he wants to play. When I look at injuries, Rico Henry, I would say, is a relatively big one as you try to figure out that back line and what that does allow in an FPL perspective, specifically speaking on 4.5 million in AR. Ager, however you want to say that, went with the soft J again. If he becomes consistent, he was a DEFCON per 90 monster with 20 starts last year at 9.5. At 4.5 million, that could be exciting to get into. That all depends on when Rico recovers as well to see how that backline really comes into focus. Carvajal, also injured. He played in a B-League game, so I don't know. I'm equating that to he had a rehab start in AA. So put that on the timetable. And Malambo is also out injured here as we start the year. Speaking again, just from an FPL perspective, their goalie, Kelleher, I believe he was the second or third highest scoring goalie, granted well behind Raya last year at 143. He did keep 10 clean sheets and had a lot of save points, I believe, mixed in there as well. Certainly an option if you feel like towing the line there. I am actually in the camp of Luke. I'm rocking the 4.5 guys. I think those are good options. The other option that I would understand would be Raya, but yeah. Looking at other impacts here, I didn't touch on the fixtures. Aside from game week 1 and game week 5, a relatively easy run there. Remember who's got your back on this pod, Mac.
Thank you.
That being said,
it's that opening fixture. My God.
That's what I'm saying. It's tough. Thiago is going to be the one that like we all had last year, at least at some point, because of the points he put up. However, now at 8 million, is he going to be worth that level of price? That being said, he is going to be locked up there. Like he is going to be minutes. I equate him to more of the amount of PKs that he stumbled into throughout the season last year, and I just don't expect that to be able to continue. So for me, at 8 million, Thiago doesn't become that much of an option.
In my opinion, so overpriced. I saw a tweet that said, like, thank God for Ancelotti playing him once in the World Cup and exposing him, because he was the type of player that any Big 16 would have signed for like way too much money last year.
Yeah.
But 8 million seems so overpriced. I mean, that's damn near Bruno price, and I totally agree. It's like he had so many pens, and then once those pens dried up, we saw that he was relatively inconsistent.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Guys that I'm gonna call out just because they have such a crowded midfield in terms of like everyone just kind of does the same when it comes to point totals. Dango, the exciting thing about him is the assist opportunity, 0.16 per 90 at a 6.5 price point. That could certainly be something. I would say Lewis Potter is someone who's interesting to me, listed in the midfield range. At 5.5, he did have some solid XG and XA. He's involved in set pieces as well. That could be something. But I think if you're really looking at them, you're going to look at the back line and try to figure out who you can fit in. DEFCON guys, you have Nathan Collins back there, 9.6 per 90 last year. Really solid numbers. I already mentioned Ager and being at 4.5, the opportunity that he could be as a budget guy for you and freeing some things up while still being able to play him. Vandenberg was also a DEFCON guy, around 9 per 90 last year. So all of those are mixing in. I've seen Coyote around. I would not go Coyote at 4.5 if you have an Ager coming in there and consistently playing.
Cool. I'm
definitely tempted by someone in that midfield, whether it's Dango or Sade or like one of the DEFCON guys like Yarmouk or something. Like, I just like the value here. And sorry, Mac, but those opening fixtures look pretty nice.
So I owned those guys last year, not Sade, and it was a painful experience. That being said, I believe the Sengari that they just transferred in is also a DEFCON monster. Like, I've seen him putting up crazy numbers preseason.
I don't know. Okay, so preseason fair, I would say last year where he was at 6.1, I believe, per 90. So where he played was not super high. There's two Sengaris. There's Forrest Sengari, and I don't know.
Yeah, he came from Lens. Couldn't tell you where that is.
That's in France.
France.
There you
go. Yeah, Luke, to your point, I would go Yarmouk if I was looking at something because of that 5 million price point and the 11.5 DEFCONs per game. Like, if I can get that out of, again, a 4.4, nice. Same thing we talked about with, I think, Anderson last year, whoever. Yeah, I'll take my 4 points and go home.
Solid.
Cool. Am I done?
Yeah.
There we go.
Let's go.
Dude, I ran out of water when Luke was talking, so not having water that entire time was a feat.
We should have rotated, and we should have added.
We definitely should have rotated.
5. We also should have added like a 5-minute timer to each team. I mean, it is the preseason Megapod. You know, we're giving to the people the content. We put in a lot of effort. I appreciate it.
Dude, that's so funny. This is the first time I've seen the time since I started talking. I made promises I can't keep, apparently.
Yeah, you were also like straight up an hour.
Yeah.
I will make promises, and I will promise.
I'll at least take that I had intros as a part of mine. So
you did. I'll make promises that I probably can't keep because, spoiler alert, most of the teams I'm covering are pretty dog shit. I decided to draft in reverse order, going up the table in solidarity with my boys Spurs. So I took all of the promoted teams. I have Newcastle. I have Chelsea, which is really unfortunate. I just don't like them, but that's okay. All right, we'll get into Newcastle. So shout out to friend of the pod, Connor. I consulted with him, and he is the foremost Newcastle expert in my life and just a data wizard. So I really trust him. His conclusion, also, he's going to be playing FPL for the first time this season and probably murder us. We're going to get crushed. Yeah, he gave us some data last year, and it was just amazing. His conclusion was don't go after any of them. So obviously some pretty big headwinds. They lost Eddie Howe. They have lost every good player that they have. And while there is some optimism regarding the young signings, a lot of them are just super young. They might sign a couple more players. Like they might sign up to potentially 4 more players, and that's just because they got like bank this summer. But when I see high turnover, young age, like they're all very cheap. So if they somehow end up being good, like I think you could look at basically any guy who's a consistent starter. But yeah, it's a little brutal with the average age. In terms of their new coach, Jassel, it's very brave of me. I've also never tried to pronounce that out loud. He's pretty vertical, high intensity and counter pressing. I believe he's from the Red Bull system, and so they play a pretty typical 4-2-3-1, which is what he did when he was the coach of Salzburg, because like everybody in the Red Bull system plays a 4-2-3-1, so they can just lift him up and drop him into a new team. However, when he was coaching in Saudi Arabia, he was much more tactically diverse. So the conclusion there is that I think he is pretty open to shifting his system to match the team, meaning he could go from a back 3 or like back 3/back 5 to a 4-2-3-1. And we've even been seeing this in the preseason. But that just makes it interesting from like a who do I pick perspective. Like if there's a wing back, but then the next game there's not a wing back because he lines up in a 4-2-3-1, that's a little tough. I don't think so. Just can you go to the next slide, Luke? Mm-hmm. My verdict real quickly on them is just wait and see. Their first 4 games are pretty challenging. So that's Liverpool, Tottenham, Bournemouth, and Leeds. And regardless of how you feel about Spurs or Liverpool in there, quite frankly, I don't think that Bournemouth or Leeds are cakewalks either. But then they go Hull, Coventry, Villa, Crystal Palace, Everton, Fulham. So they got a pretty good run from 5 through 10. But it's a pretty horrific run for the first opening 4. And I just don't think you need to get any of these guys immediately. That being said, I did put 3 options in here that you could consider. Dan Burn, I think we all know and love Dan Burn. He's kind of been there for us at various times of need over the course of the last season. However, he's not a guaranteed starter, especially if they're playing a 4-2-3-1 and they're playing League Chow and Sven Botman, who was injured last season. Like Burn could make way. He was playing a lot last year at center back, but then rotated out to the left back position when they had some injuries. But then his DEFCONs just plummeted. So it was like, do I really need him? I put the star next to Malik Chow just because he averaged 8.8 DEFCONs per game, which was 13th for defenders, and he is a pretty massive set piece threat. So Lightning, Kachow, we were all on the receiving end of some fashion of either getting punished or benefiting from his like hat trick. But just again, given how inconsistent I think Newcastle might be with a new coach and like an entirely new team and just so young, I could see his DEFCONs going up from like an inviting pressure standpoint, just because they're so vertical and they're so high intensity. And I think they have a pretty aggressive press is my understanding of how Jassel likes to set up. But still, I wouldn't go early on him. I would definitely just wait it out and see, and maybe move for him in 4 if you're on an early wild card and he proves to be good. But I think the consensus is that Newcastle are going to struggle pretty hard this season. That seems to be like the consensus of every fan and tactical expert. So wait and see. And then just another potential option is Lewis Hall. He did not put up impressive stats at all last season. He's 5.5 mil, but he was returning from injury. The only challenge there is that he's potentially being linked to Manchester United as a midfielder. So if he goes to them, that could be interesting because then he'd be like a 5.5 mil. And he grew up playing midfield all the way into all the way through until he broke into the first team, and then he got moved out to left back. So interesting one to watch, but no movement immediately, and I certainly wouldn't start the season in it with any of these guys. If I had to pick, I'd go for Chow, and that's the little gold star that he has. But that's it. I think we can go on to the next team. You guys got any questions?
No. Hard avoid.
Yeah, you guys are not high on Newcastle, I can't imagine, right?
No.
Okay, so my favorite part about researching Hull was that I actually got a history lesson because I was like, who are the Hull City legends? And so I learned who all these old guys in the back are. They're all from like a million years ago. That's pretty impressive. Hull, I think the biggest thing to call out is that they really shouldn't be in the Premier League. Like they finished 6th in the championship last season and got promoted. They were 20th for goals conceded per match. Now there's actually 24 teams in the championship or something like that, so a little bit more, but they were abysmal. They were 13th for clean sheets, 19th for possession, and 5th for goals per match. So like they weren't even like a good team last year. I follow this YouTuber who makes long form, more like socio content. Like his name is HITC7s, and he's a Hull fan, and he made 3 videos last year about Hull just being in dramatic states of disarray. And then they kind of put it together at the end of the season, got into the playoffs, and obviously everybody knows there was the Middlesbrough situation. So they got through. Congrats to them for winning. Their coach, if you want to try to pronounce that, I'm not brave enough to do this one, plays pretty low shot volume and relies on clinical finishing. So the main conclusion that I was reading when I was looking at their last season reviews was that they struggled both creatively and defensively in the championship. So they're going up to a new league. I just don't think that that's going to scale well. You can go to the next slide, Luke. But, so my verdict is hard start, avoid. I don't think I actually put the fixtures on here. But their opening fixtures in the Prem are Coventry, which is pretty solid. So some people are picking up Hull assets to go for like a game week 1 bench boost, or vice versa. They're picking up Coventry assets to go for a game week 1 bench boost against Hull. I think I fall more into that camp, as we'll get into. But then they go Manchester United, Villa, Chelsea, Newcastle, Everton, Fulham, and like, I don't know, they're promoted teams, so I just peg them out for a loss on literally any one of those games. So, but because the hard start, I think I would avoid. That being said, these promoted teams are always budget options. So they have Ollie McBurney, who is apparently hilarious, if anyone saw his FPL video. So that maybe rose his stocks a little bit for me. He had 17 goals in 25-26, and he was sharing like striker minutes. Last, I think they might have played like a double striker system at some points with Joe Gelhardt. He's a midfielder who went to Leeds. So now McBurney is the top choice, and he is great in a fast break, which is how I expect them to mostly play. So because he's very physical and very quick. So I could see McBurney being like a pretty solid bench option, but I just don't think it's going to scale well into the Prem. And as I said on the last slide, like they struggled defensively, they struggled creatively. It doesn't seem great for me. The other one is they have Matt Tarjay. I put him on here not because I really think you need to pick him, but because Ryan Gills was their assist leader last year. He's like a left back or right back. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But he had 8 assists in 25 and 26. The problem for him is that they signed Matt Tarjay, who plays in the same position, and now the minutes are uncertain for both. So if I was going to go for a budget defensive pick, it would have been probably Gills. But with Tarjay there, it's like, okay, I don't even know if he's going to start. So my verdict on Hull, unfortunately, is also avoid. I will Venmo you guys $5 if you can name any of the 3 players who are not the coach on that right side of there.
On the
Not a
right side?
chance.
Yeah, on the right side. Like, can any
Are
of you guys tell me?
are they current players?
Yeah, no, the guys on the right side are the current players.
Well, considering I had to ask that question, we're not off to a great start.
Yeah. Just always fun to like get a look at the promoted teams for the first time. So
I unfortunately
Is
did
one of
watch
them
that.
Slater?
oh, I don't know. I only know who Tarjay is on the right side. I literally don't remember who the other 2 are.
Slater is absolutely crazy. He said, I see him in a lot of FPL drafts.
No, I just pulled up their FOTMob. Obviously, it sounds like a full avoid. They don't have like a cheap dead spot forward. My question is more so, how bad can we expect them to be? Like, they play United in the first game, and is that like get every fucking asset you can? Like how is this like a holy shit? You're playing Hull, like you better have. Do you be captaining those players?
Yeah, they were closer to mid-table in the championship than they were to first. Like, they are the quality of a league below. And just the biggest thing that I got to anchor to is like they really anchored on clinical finishing, which does not scale well to the Prem when the defenders get better. Like, it's something I see time and time again. So my stocks on them are very low. I am welcome to be proven wrong. Like, there's always anomalies like the mighty Sunderland. but I don't, based purely on preseason expectations and where they finished and just the numbers I have on the last screen, I just don't think there's really a strong argument for them.
Dude, I would, just to echo that point, the amount of people that are going for bench boost week 2, which is Coventry against them. Like, they're taking another promoted team that none of us expect to really be very good and saying you should bench boost those guys because they're playing Hull.
Yeah. And for reasons I'll get into later when I cover Coventry, I think that's a pretty strong argument.
I think that just from an FPL perspective, playing United in week 1 and then Chelsea in week 4, that's just worth noting of like, that's going to create some serious FOMO. And those are probably teams that you should have some coverage on in the first 4 weeks to be able to like, and I personally, I wasn't necessarily planning on having any Chelsea. So that's like kind of changing my thinking right now of like, shit, if Hull look that bad where Coventry like puts up 4 on them, and then we're getting the Chelsea and I don't have a Chelsea player, I'm going to be like, fuck, I need to get Palmer or Rogers or Joe Pedro or whatever.
Yeah, and it's always a little uncertain. Like, I could look like a big idiot when we look back on this. They could be amazing, but just from expectations, it doesn't look good. I almost certainly pegged them for relegation, unless they significantly improve.
I would say, sorry, just to give the vibes perspective, if you did watch the Hull City video, McBurney, as you mentioned, fully passed the vibes check. He was hilarious to correcting all of his teammates and calling them out for not knowing anyone that played in the Prem, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And as you have here, he was their highest goal scorer before, 5.5. If you need a $500,000 at some point in your journey here, he doesn't seem like the worst guy to plug in because he's going to play at a cheap price.
Yeah. Similar to their brothers in Orange, though, in Wolves last year, who were abysmal, I could see the same. Like, it could be kind of bad. Okay, Coventry City Football Club. Every other club, when I Googled their full name to give them the respect they deserve, did FC. These guys are the only ones who fully spelled out football club. I don't think that means anything, but I thought it was interesting. So they dominated last season. They were freaking epic. I knew that because I'm a big Haji Wright fan. Being a fan of the U.S. men's national team.
I just figured you were a big championship fan. You were getting ready.
No, that's where West Ham is, where they belong, losers. But yeah, so they did. Also, no, you're totally right, and that's why I picked the promoted teams because I was like, there's a very real possibility we could have been there. We are not better than them. So this is solidarity with my brothers at the bottom. Yeah, but they were first for goals, XG. Goals conceded in a good way, XG conceded, and second for clean sheets. Only Ipswich, I think, was better than clean sheets, if I recall. They scored 2.83 goals a game, which is insane, and they were top 3 for headed goals, so a lot of set pieces. They have a challenging open 6 games, but I think that the reason that a lot of people are kind of like grabbing them is because obviously that they're budget guys. But then they play Hull in week 2, which we all know, and we all expect Hull to be terrible. So I think that if you're really high on the early bench boost, the Coventry guys, in my opinion, just from preseason expectations and the sort of research I did, are the promoted team budget guys to pick. They have Frank Lampard too, who is turning out to be like kind of a solid coach. We'll see what his upper end is, but he just got a team promoted, which is pretty great. He mostly plays a 4-2-3-1. Actually, I don't even need to put that on the slide because literally every team I research plays a 4-2-3-1. Half the Prem does, apparently. I don't know what's up. It's like the new 4-4-2. But occasionally he will switch to a back 3. What I will say is that their goals were very spread. So while Haji Wright was the leading goal scorer, they had 5 players with greater than 10 goals. So there's not like an out and out, like Haji Wright is the guy, everything goes through him, which is not amazing when you're looking for like a budget guy, because you want that budget guy to be like the focal point. They do tend to do some pretty inverted rotations. So their midfielder, Matt Grimes, will drop into the back line, which allows their fullbacks to push really high and create overloads. So that's why everybody and their mother apparently has Milan Van Uwijk, who's a guy I like literally hadn't heard of. But it's because they will take Grimes, drop him back, and allow Uwijk to get really high. So he could be a pretty attacking budget defender. it's just kind of a question of what does that mean for DEF CONs and how potent is that attack going to actually be when it is up against Premier League defenses. So just interesting. If you want to go to the next slide, Luke. So my verdict on them was that they are the best budget enablers. So I put the star on Ben Uig, just because he's 4 mil. He had 8 assists from right back, which was the most on the team. So again, he's Grimes is dropping, he's roaming up. It's exactly what you want to see. Maybe an FPL of old. I'm not sure how that's going to translate to a DEF CON perspective. And he's a budget enabler. As stated, though, the opening 6 is like pretty terrible. So the only thing I will say about this like really aggressive bench boost strategy is that you either need to be playing like a back 3, so you don't have to play him in any of those other 5 games, or you need to be wild carding, because they're going to play Arsenal in week 1, then they play Hull, then they play City, Brighton, Forest, and Newcastle, then Spurs. So it's a pretty tough run. Like they're good bench fodder. I could see them as being like great ways to dead end a spot. But yeah, that's about it. Haji Wright was the top scorer. He's on pens. He's definitely the best striker from the promoted teams. So if you feel like dead ending a spot or having like a slightly serviceable, like cheap forward, Haji Wright's good. The only thing is I don't know why you wouldn't go up to like a DCL for 0.5 mil cheaper if you can afford it. This guy, Loom Chauna, I have no idea if that was right or not. He's their new statement signing. Coventry players are really high on him. He costs 20 mil, which is really expensive relative to the Coventry budget. So they're taking a huge shot on him. And he's a pretty good 1v1 dribbler. So he's just one to watch for later. I would still, if you're confident that you're going to do a bench boost too, I would definitely grab Van Uwijk. I just think he'll be a good like hold for most of the season if you're not going big at the back, and he's 4 mil. So it's like really cheap. Yeah, not much else to report there.
I did a quick look at their DEF CONs per 90 in the championship and who some of their leaders were. And none of the guys that I see as like who are listed as their starters have anything good. Like their top DEF CON player had 8.9 per 90, and it's Kitching. And the next one is Bobby Thomas. And I don't think either of those guys are in their starting lineup. So it makes sense, like, from the FPL community perspective, that people are going for the guy with attacking threat, because there doesn't, unfortunately, it's not like a Sunderland where it doesn't seem like they're going to be like DEF CON monsters.
Yeah, and these guys were very attacking, and while they didn't concede a lot of goals, I think I would equate that mostly to just the fact that they were the best team in the championship. Like, I don't think that ever holds true when they move up. But we'll see. So if you're high on bench boost too, I would go for Van Uwijk. Other than that, I don't strongly recommend anyone else, but they're good enablers. All right, Chelsea FC. I don't know why I left half the slide blank. I think I meant to add more, and I just got so much down the Xabi Alonso rabbit hole that I literally forgot to add like more. But as you know, a lot of uncertainty. Xabi switches between a back 3 and a back 4 often, so his wing backs stand to benefit, particularly in my mind, Reece James, who actually got healthy for most of the season and played pretty consistently. And then, as we established in my trivia question earlier, was their top scorer. He's a pretty great attacking threat. I don't know if you guys were watching when he was actually injured, but his sort of like breakout season, he was amazing, had a ton of assists, really good at roaming high, and a pretty good defender. So stocks are rising on the Reece James thing. And then they also signed LaCroix from Crystal Palace, who we know is good. So that could be interesting. That being said, Xabi Alonso is not really tactically wedded to one system. So something that's interesting is that oftentimes they will defend in a back 5 and then switch to either just continue to play that back 5 when in possession, or they will switch to like more of a 4-2-3-1. So like the shape really changes. I think a lot of people acknowledge that he was not the problem at Real Madrid. So I don't think that the Real Madrid issues he faced should be like a knock on his CV. But Chelsea are still a very young team relative to expectations. And while they've had like a quiet window, they have still signed 400 million worth of players. And I am a firm believer that high uncertainty and high degrees of change to a squad are not good. So could you go to the next slide, Luke? You got to pay attention, brother. This is how I know you're not even watching.
No, I'm pulling data on the side. I'm like looking at metrics while you're telling me.
Yeah. Looking straight up.
Anyways, okay, yeah, I'll tell you how you can tell is that I found out that your trivia question is wrong, and Chalobah was actually the highest scoring defender.
That's interesting because I was literally on the FPL app when I was looking at that, but I believe you because that didn't feel right to me. That's why I was so surprised. It wasn't going to be a trivia question, and then it was like, oh, I don't know. Why is Chalobah not in the FPL?
Oh,
he got transferred? Now? Yeah, he's over at Como now, right?
Okay, so that makes a little more sense, right?
Okay.
They lost a player.
I forgot about him. All right, well, thank you for correcting me. The only thing about Chelsea is that they just have a ton of options. So, there's some uncertainty. I do generally rate Xabi Alonso. I think he's a good coach. And I also think that João Pedro is pretty good. So I put my star on João Pedro just because he's highly owned. As of yesterday, he's 55.6% owned, meaning any return is going to result in a rank loss. Like you're betting against literally every other player. They have tough opening fixtures. So I said he could be one to bring in later, but I just feel like everyone needs to hedge and have João Pedro. It's just that if he doesn't perform, then you're going to be seeing a mass exodus on that price. And as we know, he is our sleep paralysis team, and we have all been personally burned by him in massive capacities last season, whether you owned him or didn't. But he's been on fire. He has got 5 goals in 4 games in preseason, and he's underpriced. Like he's cheaper than Thiago somehow. So I think that they made a mistake with João Pedro, and I think that's why a lot of people have him. I put don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because he was very frustrating to own last season. But I also think he's a pretty good player, if not inconsistent. So I think picking him is overall probably like a pretty brave pick. You're just going to have to grab him and hold him and just not be like rash about it, because I could see him being very boom or bust again.
I think I'm just going to bring it up now because I think it plays into João Pedro, and a reason that I'm considering him more. Morgan Rogers, the addition. I mean, it has to be a big chunk of that 400 million. Are you looking at Rogers, or are you viewing Rogers as a benefit or decrease to João Pedro?
I am looking at him as a benefit. I actually am on the next slide. There were so many options that I feel like you could have picked for Chelsea that I had to.
See, I thought you were going to stop at Caicedo, and I was like, wait, I need to talk about Rogers.
So no. Don't worry. I have Rogers on the next slide. It was, unfortunately, there's just a lot of options with Chelsea, so I had to devote more space to them than they deserve. Anyways, Moises Caicedo, I also put on here just because he was a beast from DEFCONs last year with sort of like the 11.43 DEFCONs per match. He's taken multiple corners in preseason, so he could be huge for set piece points. He's been on a couple corners, and he acts as the defensive primary shield. So I think regardless of how Xabi Alonso chooses to set up, he will continue to play the same role, which I think will continue to lend to his DEFCONs. So he could be one to look at as like the new Anderson. If you think that he's going to DEFCON consistently to sweep up a lot of the back, he's still only priced at 5.5 mil. And I think his sort of like attacking threat is almost increasing. I'm not going to say directly, but like tangentially, like, because what I think he was doing really well in Maresca was he was roaming kind of high and taking like those massive shots from outside of the box. And that's what got him his goals early, or getting on the end of an occasional corner. Now he's kind of taking some of those corners. So it's not guaranteed that he'll be on the corners, but he's taken a bunch of them. So just one to watch for me. Let's get into your question, Sharp. You want to go next, Luke?
What? Oh, next slide. Sorry, I was like, next question.
Man, I love our devoted audience. Can't even get my own podcast host to pay attention. Anyways, we had to sit through an hour of yours, and you can't last through 23 minutes of mine.
Well, did you notice we had viewers in the first like 30 minutes? So yeah, I think that's why Luke decided to go first. He was like, "Yeah, I'm getting everyone. Look at me.
I'm the main man." It's all right. We've gotten worse as it's gone on. My verdict on Chelsea is that there's just a lot of options. As you astutely pointed out, Sharp, we got Morgan Rogers for 7.5 mil, and I'm surprised he's priced that low. To be honest, it's sort of like Rogers, where, like, I don't know how the Liverpool assets all remained at 6.5 million, and then somehow the Chelsea assets also all remained at like 7.5 million. I'm like, what the hell is going on with this pricing? The only thing is we have really limited preseason info from Rodgers just because he's resting from the World Cup. So I think he only reported the training on like Tuesday. I said he's a baller. Like he passes like the eye test. He was a little frustrating to own in terms of being a Villa asset last season, but when they had the McGinn injury and the Tielemans injury and the Onana injury, like they just kind of collapsed, and that's when I feel like he got bad. He's just a very good player in general, and I expect him to be pretty heavily involved. And I didn't know this. He also has a prior relationship with Palmer. So I think he's a cheaper way into the Chelsea midfield, and I expect them to play the same position. The other thing is I put these guys on the same slide because, as you can see for Palmer's notes, we all know what he can do at his best, but Alonso likes his attackers to exchange fluidly. So I think one of the questions is about Rodgers is he going to be subbed for Palmer, or are they going to play together? I think they will play together. And what I think you'll see one push up and the other cover deeper, just to compensate. And then I think you'll see the other push up, sort of very fluidly. So Alonso is really big on just, if a guy's got the ball, let him do his thing, but then we have to cover. So I think that stands to benefit both of them. I would be more interested in Rodgers if I had to pick one, just because he's cheaper, just purely from like a wait and see perspective. I think it's a huge punt to take on Cole Palmer at $9.5 million when we don't really know what his role is going to be. That being said, for the first time in maybe like 2 seasons, he's finally probably healthy again because he was allowed to rest at the World Cup. And so unlike a lot of the starters who have been playing all summer, I could see him coming out really hot because he's going to be so fresh comparatively that we might all be jumping from like Bruno to Palmer in 3 or something. So I wouldn't get him immediately, but he's definitely one to keep on your radar. And if we can get some guaranteed information on pens, and Palmer is on pens, that could be good.
I like the game better when Palmer is bad. And I say that because I've never gone to him and so many people go to him, and I'm like, perfect, spend that much money on him. To your point on Rodgers and honestly Alonso as well, I feel like this team has to be better organized throughout, top to bottom. I think it could be exciting to see how they play. And would I be accurate, or have you seen, is Palmer playing more in his like natural position when he was at his best inside versus where he was kind of getting forced to play more outside, I believe, last season?
Yeah, so if they do play the back 5 system, if you can think back to like what the Forest graphs looked like with like striker, 2 supporting guys, that's the role I expect Palmer's more good to play, like right behind the striker, allowed to roam pretty high, which is good for both of them because they both have a mean shot. And Alonso is like more attacking than Maresca was. Like Alonso is not necessarily a defensive coach, although his teams had pretty good defenses given the fact that they went unbeaten. He's not like park the bus. So I am unfortunately higher on Chelsea. I think the only omissions on here are that I didn't really put a Chelsea defender on there, and that's just because they were red card magnets last year because they were pretty young. And I didn't put Enzo on here, and I think that's because given the system we expect them to play, I don't think Enzo's going to be playing as high. So I don't think you'll see as much XG. I think he's going to be playing truly deeper, like next to Caicedo. Therefore, I decided to omit him entirely. Any Chelsea questions, or we feel good on that?
I feel good. I like the discussion.
Cool. Okay. That was the only team that I had to devote like semi-significant amount of time to. All right, Ipswich sounds like that's a great name for a basketball team, actually. So it's tongue twistering me. Ipswich Town FC. See, glaring omission, not spelled football club. Gary O'Neill. I said great name, mid coach, average record. I think he's like the most mid coach ever. I think I rate Kieran McKenna so high. He's gotten them promoted twice that I genuinely think he's like one of the coaches we'll be seeing a lot of in the future. I'm surprised he hasn't moved to a bigger team. Not really sure what his departure was, but I don't think Gary O'Neill's very good. Ipswich were actually pretty solid attacking in the championship last season, but Gary O'Neill is much more they play the same shape, so it's still a 4-2-3-1, but he's a lot more defensive. he likes his guys to do individual take-ons. So like have a guy beat a man off the dribble, which again is just way harder in the Prem, and that's why I think he's had fairly average results. So he got 8th with Strasbourg, and he got to the Conference League quarterfinal, which is pretty impressive. This is who he was at before he came to Ipswich. But he finished 14th with Wolves in 23-24 and was sacked in November. I actually think he was sacked in November 24. He can't be sacked twice in the same year. Maybe he can. And then he finished 15th with Bournemouth as the interim, and he was sacked in June 23 for Areola. So good sacking, like in my opinion. Like I remember when he did decently with them, and this was like after Bournemouth were freshly promoted, and I was like, that's kind of weird. Like he kept them up. Why are you sacking them? But then they hired Areola, and I was like, okay, well that's just straight up better.
Do you think Schlager and Wood like good sackings too?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think they would. So let's go to the next slide, Luke. My opinion is that they're getting relegated as well. In case you're curious what Issa Diop looks like, he's the guy on the right side, because I just genuinely didn't know. It's always interesting seeing like these guys for the first time, because I just never know what they like actually physically look like. He's a 4.0 playing center back. He's a great backup bench option if you want to dead end that spot, and he's pretty highly owned. Like I think he's something like way higher than he realistically should be. Let me look at that real quickly. He is 18% owned. So like 1 out of every 5 players has him. I expect decent defcons given O'Neill's defensive style. So if you have an appetite for a 4.0 mid defender and that's who you want to play, fine. I personally don't think I'm going to go there, although he is literally in my team right now. But that was just kind of a placeholder when I was playing around with lineups. The other guy you could look at is Florentino. One, I always think that single names are badass, so that automatically raises his vibe stocks. But two, question if he is potentially this season's Anderson. The reason for that is because he's got really, really solid baseline defensive metrics. So he's getting 11.4 defcons per start last season, which I expect to increase because O'Neill is more defensive. The only thing is that I would say is that I wouldn't jump too early on them, but he's just one to watch. So, he's cheap. He's going to remain cheap. So if he actually does end up converting those defcons, you could go there. But I fully expect Ipswich to get relegated. I don't think Gary O'Neill's an amazing coach.
How do you feel about the amount of... I saw something on Ipswich today that got me kind of excited for them, possibly closing in on spending 142 million over this summer, which is a lot of funds for a promoted team to shell out and try to, I assume, obviously, stay up based off their failed attempt 2 years ago. But I see a Florentino in there. He's one of them. Is there anyone else from these transfer windows? And I'm going to include the one from today because I don't know if it's real or not. It's Transfer News Live, which I know is always like it might happen. But
I literally blocked them on Twitter because I think they spread fake information.
They might, but if they do, Julio and Ciso, they say that they've agreed to a term fund fee. There we go. There as well.
Yeah, I admittedly don't know as much about Ciso. I know he's pretty solid. He's the Paraguay player, right? With the dyed blonde hair.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I rate him a lot just as a player. I just don't. My biggest issue with Ipswich is just Gary O'Neill. I don't think he's a fantastic coach, and I don't think that setting up super defensively in the Premier League is really ever like a great way to be successful. So I'm not high on Ipswich. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I see no reason of the 3 teams to pick their assets over Coventry players.
Fair.
Literally, unless you're dead ending that 5th defender spot, then I don't think you need any of them. All right. Let's go to my boys. There's going to be a couple more slides, but there will also be a graph. So lock in, Luke. Zerbi loves to rotate. I felt like that was a worthy note because I think that De Zerbi's a really good coach, but he likes to tinker. He's constantly playing around. So in terms of how they press, he uses a bait trap to force the opponents to pressure, right? So they're really patient in their build-up. He waits for you to come out, and then they play like 1-2 passes and they score in behind. The problem is when they're pressing, then it's a really like, or excuse me, when they're building up, it's like a really risky build up. So because they're baiting you in, they're just going to wait until you come pressure them, which then exposes a lot of space. But that means if they make a mistake, like the other teams are probably going to capitalize, which means you're not going to get a clean sheet. And to back that up, so Marseille were 15th for clean sheets under De Zerbi in 24-25, and Brighton, while being 6th in 23 or 22-23, were 14th in 23-24. So Zerbi is a little more along the lines of like an Uriola of last season, where we might concede one, but we'll score 2 or 3. That's sort of how I would think about them. So the wing backs roam really high. So Porro could almost play as like an out of position mid, which would have been something that everybody would have jumped on. Bless you, Sharp. Would have been something everybody would have jumped on like 2 seasons ago. But now with the invention of DEF CONs, it's like, is Porro gonna DEF CON as much? I don't know. But what I will say is he will probably be attacking like crazy, and we know that guy loves the shot. So he could be one to watch, but he's pretty expensive. I don't see Spurs keeping a ton of clean sheets, which is always a pretty big hit for the upper ceiling of their defenders. So just something to watch out for. In terms of their goalkeepers, he uses the goalkeepers to build out of the back. So the goalkeeper, the reason that we are keeping Kinski as our starters because he's a better passer, just better distributor, and better on the ball than Vicario, even though Vicario is a great shot stopper. So he likes to use the keeper to build out of the back, meaning, like, again, he's going to wait. They're going to be patient. He's going to wait until someone goes to pressure the keeper, and then he will have the keeper distribute it off to another center back or pass it up. So he uses a lot of like really aggressive passes for the goalkeeper, which is high risk, but it's like great for bonus points. So for anyone who's thinking about the cheap goalkeepers and thinking about Kinski for 4.5 million, I think that could be a great option because he's a great shot stopper, and just with how Spurs build up, I think he'll be great for bonus points. Next slide, please. This is my graph. So one of the things that I wanted to think about was just how are Spurs going to get DEF CONs because they are a possession heavy team. So if you were going to look at a Spurs player, I would say you'd probably want to look at like one of their defenders. But as we established last season, you really need their defenders to DEF CON. Spurs were mid-table for DEF CON hit rate. This is a little unfair because most of this data was under Thomas Frank, which is a completely different system. I think that the Spurs players will DEF CON a lot because of how aggressive the press is. So I can see that being great for someone like a Van de Ven or a Van Hecke. The other thing is that Spurs are really bad at home. So when Spurs play away, they DEF CON a lot more. So just one to watch if you are a big believer in home versus away fixtures, and you can correctly read those on a chart.
I was gonna say, I'm not even convinced this chart's going the right way, to be fair.
Yeah, that's fair. I have a track record. You want to go to the next one, Luke? So similarly for midfielders, I was really surprised to see this. So who generates the highest DEF CON potential? It's actually Spurs. So they generate the highest DEF CON potential. I'm just now realizing I might be reading this graph wrong. Is this DEF CON potential against them or for them? Either way,
For them.
Yeah, so that's what. Okay, we're fine. So the only thing that I want to really call out with Spurs, and I hope this is something that get fixed, is like look how high that variability is on home versus away. We're really bad at home. We have been the entire time we've been in the new stadium. Just really, really high variability. You look like you made a face, Sharp. Anything to add?
No, I think I thought about it wrong for a second. But...
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit of a confusing graph, but it was good when I came up with it, and I just don't remember why. Let's go to the next slide. So my verdict is that we're really going to be good value if we're good. So, Pedro Porro, he loves the shot. He roams really high, as I already said. He might struggle to get DEF CONs, but he has high attack upside. Kinski's the one I put the star on because I think a lot of people are looking at cheaper goalkeepers. Because he uses the spare man, they'll get bonus points when he cleans. And you could go for Dubravka as a good value partner if you just want to go for the 1-2. The problem is if people have Dubravka and he's not playing, you could be losing some total financial value just if people start mass transferring him out at the beginning of the season. I don't know why people would. Like, I don't know what the expectation is there, but you just got to watch out for idiots in FPL at the beginning of the season. So, and then I said Van Heck here and Van de Ven are good options. So aggressive press and buildup just equals the clean sheet risk. So while I think they're very reasonably priced, I just don't expect us to clean a lot. So unless they're getting a ton of def cons, I'm actually like cooling on the Spurs defenders as FPL picks, not as like IRL players.
That's interesting because I'm super excited about them.
Yeah, I am too. And so I was trying to dig in to like figure out if I really thought that they were going to be doing a lot. And I'm unsure. It's going to be a wait and see. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I'm curious where Senesi fits in here and if Van de Ven ever pushes to a bit like left or right back.
So Van de Ven is not a very good left back is the problem. It is definitely something that is possible because hot off the presses, we're going to sell Jed Spence for some stupid reason for no money.
And unfortunately not to us.
No, very fortunately not to you guys. The thing is with that then is that our cover is an 18-year-old in left back. So it is highly possible that Udogi, who's the starting left back, gets injured because he's made of glass, similar to Saka. Van de Ven is forced to push out to the left, and then we can play Senesi, who we know is great. Senesi will, because he's left-footed, though, probably be behind Van de Ven in the pecking order. But this gets back to what I originally said, where De Zerbi rotates a lot. So my other fear with the Van de Ven Senesi combo is that, Van de Ven might be great in one game, and then he's going to play Senesi in a different game for a different reason, meaning you're not going to get either of them consistently.
Would you say that Van Heck is consistent then?
I would say that Van Heck is consistent because he's going to be better player than Danzo, and I'm not sure that Danzo offers enough like unique upside to play him over Van Heck. Like they're much more similar players. So while he might get the occasional rotation, there's not like as tactical of a reason because they're just like Senesi is a much better passer than Van de Ven, and Van de Ven is a much better carrier. And I think that Van Heck and Danzo are the same style.
Fair.
All right, next. We'll get through this. Not much left. Crystal Palace FC.
Wow, I forgot there was another team.
Yeah, I thought we were done. What were you going to say, Luke?
Oh, I was just going to say predicted starting 11. How many Spurs are in your FPL team?
Right now, I actually only have Tonali in, and I don't even know. That was just something I threw in earlier. I was just playing around with lineups. It's highly possible I go 0. That's not true. I'm going to have Kinski. I think Kinski, I'm pretty locked in for the Kinski plus one other 4.5 mil goalkeeper. So I think I will definitely have Kinski. If Spurs turn out to be really good, you can make arguments for all of them, but just with the uncertainty, I don't really think there's a reason to. Palace, I don't really care about. Pierre Sage, League One manager of the season, 25. So actually pretty solid. So he plays a back 3, so you really don't need to worry about like the sort of style changing, but actually he's more attacking than Glasner, which is pretty impressive considering that Palace had pretty good attacking numbers last year. They lost 3-0 to Bromley, and that's been like eating up a lot of the headlines on Twitter. However, they were like heavily rotated. They had subs and then they only subbed in subs. So that's smoke. I wouldn't worry about it. They have a decent opening run, and they have good fixtures through 12. So if you're not going to wild card early, I would actually really look at Crystal Palace assets, like maybe Munoz, just because they're going to continue to play a back 3, but they're going to be more attacking. But that's my only note on them. Oh, they're also going to be in Europe again. So they're going into Europa League, and they haven't made a ton of signings. So I'm a little worried about their depth again. Next slide. So verdict, they're budget enablers. Their prices didn't get dramatically more expensive. So Ismail Assar is great. He had 11 returns in 25-26 despite injuries and AFCON. He played next to Mateta at some point, but he's probably not on pens. The only thing is, like, because it's a slightly different variation of the same system, you don't know if that's going to hold true. So he could be a good enabler. I think the person who stands to benefit the most from the new system is Mitchell. Because LaCroix left, Mitchell is probably going to shift out to the right back and play there. So he could be a really cheap way into a potentially pretty solid defense, given that I think they're going to play fairly similar. And then Will Hughes is one that is like in a lot of teams. If you, for some reason, want to dead end a midfield slot, which I think is a boneheaded move. But he's probably one of the best budget mids because he's expected to start, but he doesn't really get def cons. Like, he got 148 total after playing like damn near every game. So that's not a high average. He has almost no attacking upside. Whatever. So yeah, I think that's it. I think we're done. Are we all weary and worn?
Oh, just a wee bit.
Yeah.
I do have one question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to have one question before we end the pod. And I know we're not necessarily doing teams because we wove it in throughout. Are there any players, or I should say any teams in your current drafts that you're tripled up on?
I don't even know exactly who's in my current draft, but
technically Spurs, but that's because I have Kinski, Dubravka, and Tonali, but I'm going to change that.
Closest I have is 2 Liverpool and 2 City.
Yeah, I have Holland and Semenyo.
And 2 Everton.
Wow. I'm tripled up on Sunderland right now, and I'm absolutely loving that.
Okay, so my question for both of you guys is, who have the stocks risen on after this presentation for across any team, and then who have the stocks fallen on for you guys?
I think for me, Chelsea went up in terms of early, and I don't even mean like I've had Rodgers in my team since the beginning, but it's like I've been toying with taking him out because I'm tired of looking at the 7.5 price there and I'm getting scared. And then I was like, well, I have to have him or João Pedro right now. Like, it's not even a choice. So I would say that's increasing. Cooling. You guys tried to take Sunderland down, but I hate to say it, it's not going to happen. You've cooled me a little on Tottenham, unfortunately, because I'm feeling pretty high and excited on them. Because I just think those are really good defensive players, like no matter how you slice it. So,
yeah. I think that quality rise in real life, they're great players. There could be some serious DEFCON potential for Mateus Fernandes and Tonali. It's just big question marks. It's kind of a wait and see.
Yeah.
I think Leeds was a good one, where I liked a few of those players that we were talking about, like Ampadu, and then Chelsea as well. Like, I think I'm just looking at the fixtures, and basically when it clicked for me was when you were going through Hull, being like, fuck, I need Chelsea in week 4, and if I don't have exposure, I need probably at least one player, probably 2. So
yeah,
I mean, that's obviously something you can transfer, but like looking at their first 8, their fixtures are excellent except for Arsenal. Otherwise, it's Fulham, Brighton, Hull, Brentford, Bournemouth, Everton, and Tottenham. Like, it's just lovely.
Yeah, I rose on just to be different Forest, not because I didn't expect him to be good, but I just appreciated the numbers you put behind that, Luke. In terms of teams I didn't present on that I cooled on, I surprisingly cool on United. Just seeing the whole picture, I don't think that they're going to be bad necessarily, but just from an FPL perspective, there's like nobody to pick besides Bruno.
And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have Bruno for Hull. I don't expect, you look at his past seasons, he had that one 4 years ago and then had some very cool seasons. And he did great. Luke, you mentioned, I believe his expected assists were like half of what he actually got. Like, I foresee us all getting rid of him relatively fast, a la a Palmer from last year or 2 years ago when people had him in.
Yeah, I think that Bruno has been really frustrating to own for multiple years. And you want to talk about Thiago's pens? Bruno had like damn near 30 pens in that one season he popped off. It was ridiculous. Okay, let's get the fuck out of here, man. This has been a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, we'll catch you guys next time for a little player insights. But yeah, cheers to anybody that is still here.
All right, see you boys and girls.